The moment my granddaughter opened my small birthday gift and laughed in front of everyone, I thought my heart had already broken. Megan held up the old silver house charm between two fingers and said, "Grandma really mailed me this." But the room changed when my daughter Claire turned the package over and saw the return address. Hope Harbor. Her face went pale because she knew that place. She knew I would never go back there unless I was afraid. And when Mark reached across the table to snatch the box away, Claire finally understood one thing he had been lying about me. If you've ever been judged before someone knew the truth, I hope you'll stay with me. Please like this story, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Before everything fell apart, I used to believe my family was the one thing life had not taken from me. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and at 68 years old, I had already survived the kind of losses that teach a woman how to smile while carrying an ache no one can see. My husband Robert had been gone for almost 6 years. He passed on a quiet October morning in the same little house we bought together in Dayton, Ohio, back when the kitchen wallpaper was yellow and our mortgage payment seemed impossible. That house was never fancy. It had a narrow front porch, a maple tree that dropped too many leaves in the fall, and a hallway floorboard that creaked no matter how many times Robert tried to fix it. But every inch of it held a memory. Claire's pencil marks were still on the pantry door from the years we measured her height. Megan's little pink handprint made in kindergarten was still tucked inside a frame near my sewing basket. Robert's old reading glasses still sat in the drawer beside his favorite chair because somehow moving them felt like admitting he would never reach for them again. After Robert died, Claire worried about me constantly. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone so much," she would say, standing in my kitchen with her work purse still over one shoulder. "At least come stay with us for a few weeks." But I liked my routines. I liked waking up early, brewing coffee, watering the African violets by the window, and walking to the mailbox before the neighborhood got busy. I had spent 32 years working as a postal clerk, so mail had always felt strangely comforting to me. Bills, birthday cards, catalogs, postcards from places I would never visit. Each envelope felt like proof that the world was still moving. Claire was my only child. For most of her life, it had been the two of us against whatever storm came through. She was practical, responsible, and sometimes too tired to admit she was tired. She managed the front office at a dental clinic in Beaver Creek, and she had the kind of job where everyone needed something from her before she even had time to sit down. Megan, my granddaughter, used to be my sunshine. When she was little, she would run into my house every Saturday morning like she owned the place. She would throw her backpack on the couch, open my refrigerator without asking, and shout, "Grandma, did you make pancakes?" And I always had. Blueberry pancakes mostly. Sometimes chocolate chip if I wanted to spoil her. Robert used to pretend to scold me for it, but he would be the first one sneaking extra whipped cream onto her plate. Megan and I had our own little world. We baked Christmas cookies every December. We planted marigolds every spring. When she was 8, she told me she wanted to be an architect because she liked drawing houses with big windows. That was when I gave her an old silver charm shaped like a tiny house. It had belonged to my mother before it belonged to me. "This is for when you build your first dream house," I told her. She wore it for 3 days on a ribbon around her neck, then tucked it into a little box of treasures in her room. Back then, I never imagined that same charm would one day be laughed at in front of a room full of people. Things began to change after Mark Bennett came into Claire's life. At first, I wanted to like him. Truly, I did. Mark was handsome in that polished, confident way some men learn to use like a tool. He had silver at his temples before he was even 50 expensive-looking watches and a smile that made people feel chosen. He owned a small home repair business and spoke with the easy charm of someone who had spent years convincing clients to trust him. The first time Claire brought him to dinner, he arrived with flowers for me and a bottle of wine for the table. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, holding my hand with both of his, "Claire talks about you so much I feel like I already know you." I remember thinking that was sweet. I remember wishing Robert had been there to see Claire happy again. Mark was attentive to her. He pulled out her chair. He asked about Megan's school. He complimented my pot roast and insisted he had not tasted anything that good in years. When he offered to fix the loose railing on my porch, I thanked him and thought, how lucky we are. A man who wants to help. Looking back, I can see how carefully he entered our family. He never demanded anything at first. He offered, he suggested, he noticed. He made himself useful in little ways that looked like kindness. If my gutters needed cleaning, Mark knew a guy. If my car made a noise, Mark could take a look. If a bill confused me, Mark would say, "Don't worry, Lauren. I deal with paperwork all day. Let me help." And because I was tired, because I was lonely, because I wanted to believe my daughter had chosen a good man, I let him. Life has a way of teaching us that the smallest things often carry the greatest truth. A tiny charm, an old envelope, a familiar return address, none of them looked powerful from the outside. But sometimes love hides itself in humble places because it knows pride and greed are too busy chasing what shines. If there is one lesson I learned, it is this: never dismiss someone's fear simply because another person calls them confused, especially when that person is older, especially when they have spent a lifetime protecting others. Financial abuse inside a family does not always begin with shouting or obvious cruelty. Sometimes it begins with, "Let me help." Sometimes it wears a nice suit, speaks gently, and convinces everyone that control is care. I also learned that apology matters, but changed behavior matters more. Claire could not erase the times she doubted me. Megan could not erase the moment she laughed. But they chose to face the truth, accept responsibility, and become safer people. That is where healing began. So if someone you love gives you something small, look closer. If someone you trust asks you to doubt your own instincts, pause. And if someone in your family says they are afraid, please listen before they have to prove their pain. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to know what you think. Have you ever seen a small act reveal a big truth? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there, and subscribe if stories about family truth and healing speak to you. The little jokes started slowly. At Thanksgiving, when I forgot where I had set down the cranberry sauce, Mark chuckled and said, "Careful, Lauren. We may need to put tracking tags on you next." Everyone laughed. I laughed too because it seemed harmless. Another time I mentioned that I still balanced my checkbook by hand. Mark leaned back in his chair and smiled at Megan. "Your grandma is keeping the 1980s alive all by herself." Megan giggled. Claire rolled her eyes and said, "Mark, stop." But she was smiling when she said it. I told myself not to be sensitive. Older women are often told that even when something inside them whispers that a line has been crossed. So I swallowed the small sting and kept passing the potatoes. But Mark had a way of making me feel smaller without ever raising his voice. If I asked a question about my phone, he would sigh just softly enough for everyone to hear. If I repeated a story, he would glance at Claire with amused patience. If I said I wanted to handle something myself, he would say, "Of course, Lauren, independence is important at your age." At your age. Those 3 words began to follow me around like a shadow. The worst part was watching Megan change. Teenagers grow sharp edges. I understood that. But Megan's sweetness began to harden into something that sounded too much like Mark. She stopped calling me Grandma Lauren and started calling me Gram in a tone that made it feel like a joke. She stopped asking about my garden. She barely looked up from her phone when I came over for dinner. One Sunday afternoon, I brought her a handmade quilt I had been working on for months. It was soft blue and cream stitched from fabric pieces I had saved from Claire's old dresses and Robert's shirts. Megan glanced at it and said, "That's nice, but it doesn't really match my room." Mark laughed from the kitchen doorway. "Well, handmade things have character," he said, "even when they don't have style." Claire gave him a look, but again she said nothing serious. I took the quilt home that night and folded it back into the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. I told myself Megan was young. I told myself Mark was only teasing. I told myself Claire was simply busy. But deep down, I knew I was being pushed to the edge of their lives. The first real opening Mark found came after a spring storm damaged part of my roof. It was nothing dramatic, just missing shingles and a brown water stain blooming on the ceiling above my guest room. I called a local contractor, but Mark insisted that was foolish. "Lauren, please," he said. "People take advantage of seniors every day." "Let me handle it." That word bothered me. Seniors, not homeowners, not mothers, not women. Seniors. Still, he sounded concerned and Claire was relieved. "Mom let Mark help," she said over the phone. "You shouldn't have to deal with all that paperwork." So I let him call the insurance company. I let him look at the repair estimate. I let him sit at my kitchen table with his laptop open, explaining deductibles and claims and online forms. "You really should have all this organized digitally," he told me one evening. "Banking, insurance, utilities, property tax. Everything. It would make your life so much easier." "I've managed just fine," I said. He smiled gently, almost sadly. "I know you have, but Robert isn't here to help anymore, and Claire worries herself sick about you." That hurt because it was true enough to sound caring. So when he offered to set up online access for my bills, I agreed. When he asked for account numbers, I hesitated, then handed them over. When he said he could create a folder with passwords and emergency contacts in case anything happened to me, I told myself he was being responsible. I wanted to believe this was what family did. Help each other, protect each other, make life easier. I did not understand then that some people do not steal by breaking a window in the middle of the night. Some people steal by sitting at your kitchen table, drinking your coffee and calling it love. The first time Mark looked at my bank statement, his expression changed for only a second. It was quick. So quick, I almost missed it. His eyes paused on the savings balance Robert and I had built over decades. Not a fortune, but enough to keep me safe. Enough to repair the roof, pay my taxes, cover medical emergencies, and stay in my own home without depending on anyone. Then Mark smiled. Well, he said softly, tapping the paper with one finger, you've been more careful than most people. I should have taken that statement as a warning. Instead, I took it as praise. That was the beginning. Not the birthday dinner, not the return address, not the moment Megan laughed at my small gift. The beginning was right there in my kitchen beneath the warm light over the table when I mistook a hungry man's interest for kindness. The first thing that disappeared was not money. It was mail. That may sound small to someone who has never spent 3 decades sorting envelopes behind a post office counter, but I knew my mail, the way some women know the sound of their grandchildren's footsteps. I knew when my water bill usually arrived. I knew which day the bank statement came. I knew the look of my insurance company's envelopes before I even read the return address. So when certain letters stopped appearing in my mailbox, I noticed. At first, I blamed the weather. Dayton had been getting those strange spring storms that blew trash cans into the street and knocked branches onto power lines. Maybe something had gotten delayed. Maybe the mail carrier had a substitute who mixed up a few houses. Ordinary mistakes happen. I had made some myself back when I was working. But then my property tax notice did not arrive. Then my bank statement did not arrive. Then a letter from my insurance company came already opened, the flap tucked back inside as if someone had tried to make it look untouched. I stood in my kitchen, holding that envelope, staring at the torn edge, and felt the first real chill move through me. Mark had been helping me for almost 3 weeks by then. After the roof repair, he had set up what he called a cleaner system for my bills. He brought his laptop to my house twice a week, usually in the evening after Claire got off work. Sometimes he came alone. He would sit at my kitchen table with his sleeves rolled up, typing quickly while I made tea. You'll thank me later, he said one Thursday night. Everything is easier online. No waiting for paper, no lost checks, no late fees. I've never paid a late fee in my life, I told him. He smiled without looking up. I know, Lauren. You've done great, but things change. There it was again, that gentle little reminder that the world had moved on without me. He asked for my utility account numbers, my insurance policy information, the login to my bank's online portal, and the password to my email so he could organize confirmations. I hesitated at the email. My email is private, I said. Mark leaned back and lifted both hands like I had accused him of something terrible. Of course, I'm not trying to invade your privacy. I just want to make sure bills and notices don't get missed. Claire would never forgive me if something happened, and I could have prevented it. He always knew where to press. Claire's worry, Robert's absence, my age, my desire not to be a burden. So I wrote the password on a yellow sticky note and slid it across the table. I still remember his hand covering it, not snatching it, not grabbing it, just covering it calmly like he had expected it all along. A few days later, I tried to log into my bank account to check whether the roof contractor had cashed my check. The password did not work. I typed it again slowly, one letter at a time. Still wrong. I clicked forgot password, but the reset code did not come to my email. It went to a phone number ending in digits I did not recognize. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered. Then I called Mark. He answered on the third ring, cheerful as always. Hey, Lauren, everything okay? I can't get into my bank account. There was the smallest pause. Then he laughed softly. Did you type the password wrong? I wrote it down. Maybe the bank made you reset it and you forgot. I didn't reset anything. Well, sometimes those websites are confusing. Don't worry, I'll come by tomorrow and fix it. I'd rather call the bank myself. Another pause longer this time. Sure, he said. But honestly, they're just going to make it more complicated. Let me help. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. I should have felt comforted. Instead, I felt watched. The next morning, I called the bank anyway. I sat at my kitchen table with my old address book open, using the number printed on a paper statement from months earlier. After 15 minutes of automated menus, a woman named Denise came on the line. She was polite at first. Then, after verifying my identity, her voice changed. Mrs. Mitchell, she said carefully. I see there was a recent update to your online banking profile. I didn't update anything. Your contact phone number was changed and paper statements were turned off. My hand tightened around the receiver. Turned off. Yes, ma'am. You are now enrolled in electronic statements only. I did not authorize that. Silence stretched on the line. Denise lowered her voice. I can help you secure the account. I'll need to ask you a few additional questions. Before I could answer, a knock sounded at my back door. I turned and saw Mark through the window, holding 2 coffees in a cardboard tray. My stomach sank. I had not told him I was calling the bank. I covered the phone with my hand and went to open the door only halfway. Morning, he said brightly. Thought I'd stop by before my first job. Claire said you were worried yesterday. She told you that. She worries. You know how she is. His eyes moved from my face to the phone in my hand. The brightness in his expression dimmed just slightly. Are you on with the bank? I nodded. He stepped forward as if to come inside, but I did not move from the doorway. Lauren, he said gently, you should have waited for me. These people will lock you out completely if you answer one security question wrong. Denise's voice came faintly through the receiver. Mrs. Mitchell, are you still there? Mark smiled and held out his hand. I'll talk to them. Something inside me resisted. It was not a loud feeling. It was not certainty. It was the tiny pull of instinct the kind women are taught to ignore because politeness is easier than suspicion. I pulled the phone closer to my chest. No, I can manage. For the first time since I had known him, Mark's face showed irritation before he could hide it, only for a second. Then the smile returned. Of course, he said. I'll wait. But he did not wait quietly. He stepped into the kitchen, set the coffees on the counter, and stood close enough that I could feel him listening. Denise helped me restore access to the account. She changed the phone number back to mine and turned paper statements on again. Then she said something that made the room tilt. Mrs. Mitchell, while I have you, I also need to confirm whether you recently approved an application for a home equity line of credit. I gripped the edge of the table. Oh, what a home equity line of credit secured by your property on Maple Ridge Lane. I never approved that. Mark moved so fast that his coffee nearly tipped over. What did they say he asked? I turned away from him. Denise, please repeat that. The bank employee's voice became very careful. An application was submitted last week. It has not been fully funded yet, but documentation was received with your signature. My signature. Mark reached toward the phone. Lauren, let me clarify this. You're misunderstanding. I pulled away. Do not touch the phone. His hand froze in the air. Denise asked, Mrs. Mitchell, is someone with you? I looked at Mark. He looked back at me with calm eyes, but there was a warning underneath them now. Not open, not loud, but present. My son-in-law is here, I said. Mark gave a small laugh. Tell her I'm the one helping you organize the roof claim. Denise did not laugh. Mrs. Mitchell, she said, for your protection, I recommend you come into the branch in person. I will. Mark's jaw tightened. After I hung up, the kitchen became so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. I waited for him to explain. He sighed as if I had disappointed him. Lauren, you scared that poor woman for no reason. She said there was an application against my house. Yes, he said, spreading his hands. Because we discussed options for the roof. We discussed an insurance claim, not a loan. It wasn't a loan. It was just a backup option. With my signature, he looked at me then with something close to pity. You signed several documents last week. I signed the contractor estimate and some authorization forms. No. Yes, Lauren. You did. The way he said it made my skin go cold, not because he sounded angry, but because he sounded certain. He sounded like a man already prepared for this moment. I know what I signed, I said. His voice softened. Do you... That question hit harder than if he had shouted. I stared at him, and suddenly every little joke came back to me. Tracking tags, the 1980s, at your age, forgetting things, repeating stories. All of it had been placed around me like stones one by one until he could build a wall and call it concern. When Claire called that evening, Mark had clearly spoken to her first. Mom, she said, tired and worried, Mark told me you got upset with the bank. I didn't get upset. They asked me about a credit line I never approved. He said it was just paperwork connected to the roof. Claire, someone changed my bank login. She sighed softly. Mom, could it be possible you forgot giving him permission? My heart cracked a little. Not because she was cruel. Claire was not cruel. She sounded exhausted, frightened, and already half convinced. No, I said. It is not possible. I'm not saying you're wrong, she replied quickly. I'm just saying maybe everything feels overwhelming right now. I closed my eyes. There are moments when betrayal does not arrive as a scream. Sometimes it arrives in your daughter's gentle voice asking you to doubt yourself. After we hung up, I did something I had not done since Robert died. I locked my bedroom door. Then I took out an old spiral notebook from the nightstand and wrote down everything: the missing mail, the changed password, the opened envelope, the phone number, the woman at the bank, the home equity application, Mark's exact words in the kitchen. At the top of the page, I wrote one sentence. I am not confused. I underlined it twice. The next day, I went to the bank in person. Denise was there, and she looked even more concerned when she showed me the printed copy of the application. The signature at the bottom looked like mine, but it was not mine. The L was too sharp. The M curved the wrong way. Anyone else might have missed it, but I had signed my name for 68 years. I knew the rhythm of my own hand. A stranger had tried to steal my house with a version of my name, and I already knew exactly who had held the pen. I did not confront Mark that day. A younger version of me might have marched straight into Claire's house with the forged document in my hand, demanding answers at full volume. But age, grief, and motherhood had taught me something painful when someone has already prepared a story about you. Truth alone is not always enough. You need proof. And sometimes you need to stay quiet long enough to survive. I left the bank with a folder tucked under my arm and my knees trembling so badly I had to sit in my car for nearly 20 minutes before I could drive home. Denise had made me copies of what she was allowed to provide: the home equity application, the change request for my online statements, and the form showing my phone number had been replaced. The signature on the application looked like mine if you were not really looking. But I was looking. I had spent years signing certified mail receipts, retirement forms, birthday cards, school permission slips, mortgage papers, and hospital documents for Robert. A woman knows her own name. My hand always lifted slightly at the end of Mitchell. Whoever had written that false signature pressed too hard, like they were copying a shape instead of writing a life. When I got home, I placed the copies on my kitchen table and stared at them under the same light where Mark had smiled at my savings balance. My first instinct was to call Claire. My second instinct was to wait. I had already heard the doubt in her voice. I knew Mark had reached her before I could. That was his gift, I was beginning to understand. He did not just steal access to accounts, he stole the room around a person. He made sure that when you finally cried out, everyone around you had already been taught to hear noise instead of truth. So I called Mark instead. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "Can you come by this afternoon?" I asked. "I want to talk about the bank paperwork." There was a pause. Then his warm, smooth tone returned. "Of course, Lauren. I figured you'd have some questions." Questions. Not accusations, not fear. Questions. He arrived at 3:15 wearing a navy polo shirt with his company logo stitched over the chest. Bennett Home Solutions, a name that suddenly felt cruel. He brought a folder of his own and set it on the table before sitting across from me. I did not offer coffee. He noticed. "You seem upset," he said. "I went to the bank." "I know." Those two words landed heavily. I looked at him. "How would you know Claire told me you were planning to go?" I knew that was not true. I had not told Claire, but I let the lie sit between us. Mark opened his folder and pulled out a few pages. "Lauren, I think this has gotten blown out of proportion. The credit line was never meant to be used unless necessary. It was just a responsible backup. You submitted it without my permission." "No," he said gently. "You gave permission when you asked me to handle the roof situation. I asked you to speak with the insurance company, and part of handling things means exploring financial options." With a forged signature. For the first time, his eyes hardened, only for a moment. Then he exhaled and looked down at the table as if he were grieving for me. "Lauren," he said softly, "I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you signed more than you remember." "No, I didn't. You were tired that day. You said yourself you hadn't slept well. That does not mean I signed a loan application. It wasn't a loan application in the way you're thinking. It was secured by my house." He folded his hands together. "Your house needs repairs. You're living alone. You don't always understand what these documents mean. That's not your fault." There it was, the trap wrapped in concern. "My mind is fine," I said. "I didn't say it wasn't. You implied it. I'm saying you might be overwhelmed. Overwhelmed is not incompetent." The word came out before I fully understood why it had been waiting in my mouth. Mark's gaze shifted. "Not much. Just enough. Incompetent." I saw then that he recognized the word. Not as a general insult, but as a legal doorway. He leaned back in his chair. "Has someone been putting ideas in your head? No. Because this kind of suspicion can become unhealthy. Claire and I are worried." "Claire and you?" "Yes. She loves you, Lauren. She's afraid you're declining and too proud to admit it." My throat tightened. I had prepared myself for denial. I had prepared myself for excuses. I had not prepared myself for him to use my daughter's love as a weapon. She said that. He looked at me with practiced sadness. Not in those exact words, but she sees it. Megan sees it too. Megan. My sweet girl who once fell asleep on my couch holding a stuffed rabbit. My granddaughter who used to ask me to braid her hair before school pictures. My Megan now being placed on the other side of a line Mark was drawing. I wanted to cry. Instead, I reached for my notebook. "What is that?" he asked. "Notes. About what things I need to remember." His mouth curved faintly. "That's good. Writing things down can help." He meant it as another little cut, but I kept writing. Mark came by on Thursday, April 18th, claimed I signed documents I did not sign, said Claire and Megan are worried I am declining. He watched my pen move across the page. "Lauren, this is exactly what I mean," he said. "You're making everything adversarial." "No, I'm making it accurate." He stood then, slowly gathering his folder. "I think we should involve Claire in these conversations from now on. I think that would be wise," I said. He gave me a look I could not name at the time. Later I would understand it as calculation. That evening Claire came over after work. She looked exhausted, still in her dental clinic blouse, her hair pulled back tightly, her eyes shadowed with worry. She hugged me at the door, but her body was stiff. "Mom," she said, "we need to talk." We sat in the living room, not the kitchen. I chose Robert's old chair because I needed his memory under me. Claire perched on the edge of the sofa. "Mark says you accused him of forging your signature. I did not accuse him without reason. I saw the document. He said the bank confused you. The bank did not confuse me. He said you became very upset. Wouldn't you be upset if someone tried to borrow against your house?" Her eyes filled with tears, and for a second I thought she believed me. Then she said, "Mom, I'm scared." "So am I." "No, I mean, I'm scared for you." The room went still. She continued carefully as if every word had been rehearsed. "You've been forgetting things? You've been getting suspicious. Mark says you've been locking doors, taking notes, calling the bank repeatedly. I called once." "Mom." That one word carried so much pity that I almost could not breathe. I leaned forward. "Claire, listen to me. Your husband changed my bank information." He turned off my paper statements. He submitted a credit application using my name. Her face tightened. "Why would he do that? For money." She shook her head immediately. "Mark's business is fine." "Are you sure?" Her eyes flashed, then defensive and tired. "Please don't do that. Please don't make him the villain because you're frightened." I sat back as if she had slapped me. "I am not making him anything," I whispered. "He is showing me." Claire wiped under one eye. "Maybe you should talk to a doctor, just to make sure everything is okay." There it was. The word not spoken but fully present. Decline, confusion, incompetence. I looked at my daughter and remembered another version of her 7 years old clutching my hand in a shelter hallway, trusting me to know where safety was. I had protected her once with nothing but a purse, a bus ticket, and fear. Now I was sitting in my own living room trying to protect myself from the man she believed. "Claire," I said quietly, "do you remember Hope Harbor?" Her face changed. Just a flicker, but I saw it. "Why are you bringing that up?" "Because once you knew what it meant when I said I was afraid." She stood up too quickly. "That was a long time ago." "Yes, it was. Mark is not Dad. I didn't say he was, but the name had already entered the room. Claire's father. My first husband before Robert. The man whose temper had sent us to Hope Harbor when Claire was a child. The man Claire spent most of her adult life pretending she barely remembered. Her voice hardened. "This is unfair. What is unfair is asking me to doubt my own mind because it is easier than doubting your husband." She flinched. For 1 second, I thought I had reached her. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down. "Mark." "Of course." She did not answer, but the moment broke. "I have to go," she said. After she left, I remained in Robert's chair until the sky outside turned dark. Then I went upstairs and did something I had been avoiding. I checked every drawer in the desk where I kept my important papers, deed insurance policies, birth certificates, Robert's death certificate, tax returns. Some things were still there. Some were not. The folder containing my original house deed had been moved. The spare copy of my power of attorney form was missing. A bank envelope that once held old savings bonds was empty. My hands began to shake, but I kept going. At the very back of the lower drawer, half hidden beneath a stack of Medicare brochures Mark had brought me, I found a printed document I had never seen before. The title at the top read, "Emergency Petition for Guardianship." My name was typed beneath it, Lauren Mitchell. The document claimed I was no longer capable of safely managing my finances, property, or personal affairs. It listed examples: forgetfulness, paranoia, emotional instability, confusion with banking, hostility toward family assistance. Family assistance. I read the words 3 times before they blurred. Near the bottom under petitioner was Mark Bennett's name, and beside it was a blank space waiting for Claire's signature. That was when the truth became bigger than money. Mark was not only trying to take what I owned, he was trying to take the legal right to call me myself. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, surrounded by drawers and old papers, and pressed the document to my chest because my hands could not hold it steady. For the first time, I understood that if I made one wrong move, he would not just say I was confused. He would have papers ready to prove it. I slept with the guardianship petition under my mattress that night. Sleep, of course, is too generous a word. I lay in the dark listening to the house settle around me, every creak sounding like a warning. The maple tree scraped one thin branch against the upstairs window, and each time it did, my heart jumped like someone was trying to get in. For the first time since Robert died, my own home did not feel fully mine. That was what frightened me most. Not the missing money, not even the forged signature. It was the knowledge that Mark was not acting impulsively. He had a plan, a patient, polished, legally shaped plan. He had already changed my bank contact information. He had already turned off my paper statements. He had already prepared a story in which I was confused, paranoid, forgetful, and hostile toward help. And now he had a petition ready to make that story official. The next morning, I called the bank before breakfast and asked Denise to review my savings account. My voice sounded steady, but I had one hand pressed against my chest while she searched. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said after a long pause, "there was a transfer made from your savings account last Friday." "How much?" Another pause. $17,500. The kitchen went gray around the edges. I sat down slowly. That can't be right. "I'm sorry," Denise said softly. "It appears to have been authorized electronically." "I did not authorize it. I understand. I'm going to mark it as disputed, but you should know these cases can take time." Time. That word felt almost cruel. Mark was not moving slowly anymore. He had gone from preparing paperwork to taking money, and the guardianship petition told me what came next. If he could convince a judge I was incompetent, he would not need to sneak. He would simply take control while everyone called it protection. "Can you tell where the money went?" I asked. "I can see the receiving institution, but not the full account owner from here. It appears connected to a business account." "A business account. Bennett Home Solutions." I closed my eyes and saw Mark tapping my bank statement with one finger. "You've been more careful than most people." He had not been admiring my carefulness. He had been measuring it. After I hung up, I did not cry. I expected tears, but none came. Something colder had settled in me now, something practical. I had been afraid before. Now I was in danger. There is a difference. Fear can make you freeze. Danger, if you are lucky, can make you move. I went upstairs and pulled an old canvas overnight bag from the closet. I packed 3 outfits, my medications, Robert's photograph, my notebook, the bank copies, the guardianship petition, and every document I could still find. Then I stopped in front of my jewelry box. Inside was my mother's silver house charm. It lay in the bottom compartment, wrapped in a square of faded blue velvet. The little charm was no bigger than my thumbnail, tarnished along the roofline with a tiny door etched into the front. My mother had worn it during the hardest years of her life, then passed it to me when I was newly married. I had given it to Megan once when she was 8, but she had returned it years later in a box of childhood things Claire cleaned out from her room. "She's too old for little trinkets now," Claire had said. I had smiled and pretended that did not hurt. Now I held it in my palm, and a memory rose so sharply it stole my breath. Claire, at 7 years old, standing beside me in the lobby of Hope Harbor, her hair tangled from sleep, her small hand gripping mine so hard it hurt. A volunteer had knelt in front of her and said, "You're safe here, sweetheart." Claire had looked up at me, waiting to see if I believed it. I had believed it because I had to. Hope Harbor had saved us once. Maybe it could save me again. I found Helen Brooks's number in my old address book. Helen and I had worked together at the post office years ago before she retired and began volunteering with women's safety programs. We were not close anymore, but friendship does not always disappear simply because life gets quiet. When she answered, her voice was older but unmistakable. "Lauren." "My goodness, it's been a long time." "Helen," I said, and my voice broke on her name. That was all it took. Within 10 minutes, I had told her enough. Not everything, but enough for her to stop sounding pleasantly surprised and start sounding serious. "Listen to me," she said. "Do not confront him again. Do not tell Claire where you're going if you think he has influence over her. Can you leave the house today?" "Yes. Do you have your documents?" "Most of them." "Bring what you have. Come to Hope Harbor. Ask for Angela Reed when you arrive." I looked around my bedroom at the bed I had shared with Robert, the curtains I had sewn myself, the framed photographs on the dresser. Leaving felt impossible, but staying felt worse. What if Mark comes here? Then let him find an empty house. I left through the back door 27 minutes later. I did not take my usual purse because Mark knew that purse. I used an old brown tote bag instead. I turned off my location sharing on my phone after Helen walked me through it. Then, because some instincts never leave a retired postal clerk, I placed one envelope in the outgoing mail slot before I drove away. Inside was a birthday card for Megan. Not the real gift. Not yet. Just a simple card that said, "I love you more than you know." I drove to Hope Harbor with both hands locked on the steering wheel. The building looked smaller than I remembered. Brick walls, blue awning flower pots near the entrance. But when I stepped inside, the smell of coffee, laundry soap, and old carpet brought back 25 years in one breath. A woman at the front desk looked up. "Can I help you?" "My name is Lauren Mitchell," I said. "I was told to ask for Angela Reed." Angela was younger than I expected, maybe in her early 40s, with calm eyes and a navy blazer. She led me into a private room, closed the door, and let me speak without interrupting. That may sound simple, but when people have been questioning your mind, being allowed to speak is its own kind of mercy. I showed her the bank copies, the missing documents, the guardianship petition, my notebook. She read quietly, her face becoming more serious with every page. "This is financial abuse," she said finally, "and possible fraud. The guardianship petition makes it more urgent. Hearing someone name it nearly undid me. Not confusion, not drama, not overreacting. Abuse." Angela helped me make digital copies of everything. She scanned the bank documents, photographed the guardianship petition, and saved my notes. Helen arrived halfway through with a paper cup of tea and wrapped both arms around me. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "I don't know if Claire will believe me," I said. Helen's face softened. "Then we help her see what she is ready to see." That evening, while I sat in the small guest room Hope Harbor gave me, I thought about Megan's 18th birthday dinner coming up in a few days. I had planned to attend. I had planned to give her a small check, maybe take a photo with her before she went off to college and became even further from the little girl who once loved my pancakes. Now I could not risk walking into that room. Mark would be there. Claire would be there. And if Mark sensed I had evidence, he might move faster. But I needed to reach Claire. Not through a phone call he could interrupt. Not through an accusation he could twist. I needed something that would make her stop, remember, and look closer. That was when I took out the silver house charm. Most people never knew it opened. My mother had shown me the tiny seam under the roof when I was young. It was meant for a prayer slip, she said, or a lock of hair, or anything too precious to lose. The hidden compartment was small, but not useless. Angela helped me transfer the scanned evidence onto a tiny memory card. Then, with trembling fingers, I slid that card inside the charm and snapped it shut. A cheap little trinket, some might call it. An old woman's sentimental gift. But inside it was the truth. I wrapped the charm in tissue paper, placed it in a small white jewelry box, and put that inside a padded envelope. On the front, I wrote Megan's name and Claire's address. In the corner for the return address, I wrote Hope Harbor. My hand shook when I finished. Helen noticed. "You want Claire to see it. I need her to see it," I said. "She may ignore my name. She may ignore my fear. But she will not ignore that place." Because Hope Harbor was not just an address. It was the doorway Claire and I had once walked through when we had nowhere else to go. If my daughter still remembered the girl she used to be, she would understand. And if Mark saw that return address first, I prayed he would be afraid enough to make a mistake. The night of Megan's 18th birthday dinner, I was sitting in a small room at Hope Harbor while my family gathered around a table without me. That was the strangest part of hiding. The world did not stop. People still made reservations. Candles were still lit. Waiters still carried plates. Phones still buzzed with photos and happy messages. Somewhere across town, my granddaughter was turning 18 and I was not there to see her smile. I had imagined that birthday for years. When Megan was born, I held her in the hospital and counted her tiny fingers twice because I could not believe something so perfect had entered our family. Robert stood beside me with tears in his eyes, pretending he had allergies. Claire was exhausted and glowing, and I remember whispering to that baby, "I'll be here for every birthday I can." And I had been. First birthday with cake smashed across her cheeks. 5th birthday with a princess crown crooked on her head. 10th birthday when she wanted roller skates and fell 3 times in the driveway before insisting she was fine. 16th birthday when she barely hugged me because her friends were watching. But 18 was different. 18 was the doorway between girlhood and the rest of her life. I had wanted to be there. I had wanted to look at her and see just for a moment the little girl who used to press her face against my kitchen window when Robert made pancakes. Instead, I sat on a narrow bed at Hope Harbor holding a paper cup of tea that had gone cold. Helen came by just after 6 and found me staring at my phone. "Lauren," she said gently, "you don't have to watch the clock." I know, but of course I did. At 6:15, they would arrive at the restaurant. Claire had chosen a family-owned Italian place in Oakwood called Bellini's, the kind of restaurant with white tablecloths, dim lights, and framed photographs of old Dayton streets on the walls. Megan loved their lemon chicken, and Claire loved that it felt special without being too flashy. Mark loved places where people could see him looking generous. I imagined him standing near the hostess station, one hand at Claire's back, smiling as if he were the man holding the family together. He would shake hands with relatives, joke with the waiter, and say something charming about Megan growing up too fast. Everyone would see a devoted stepfather, a steady husband, a helpful son-in-law. No one would see the petition in my bag. No one would see the stolen money. No one would see me. At the restaurant, from what Claire later told me, Mark performed beautifully. He wore a charcoal blazer and the watch he liked to tap when people were late. He ordered appetizers for the table before anyone asked, then made a toast when the drinks arrived. To Megan, he said, raising his glass, "Smart, beautiful, ambitious, and finally old enough to admit her parents are usually right." People laughed. Megan rolled her eyes but smiled. Claire sat beside him, tired but trying. She had spent the day decorating a small cake herself, pale pink frosting with white flowers around the edge. She had texted me earlier that morning before everything, asking whether I might still come. I had stared at the message for 10 minutes. "Mom, I know things are tense, but Megan would love to see you tonight. Please don't let this become bigger than her birthday." I wanted to reply, "It is already bigger than her birthday." Instead, under Angela's advice, I wrote only, "I love you. I'm safe. Please pay attention to the package." Claire did not answer. Mark must have seen the message. Or maybe Claire showed him. Either way, by the time the family sat down at Bellini's, he had already explained my absence for me. "Lauren isn't feeling well," he told the table, sighing with just enough sadness to sound noble. "She's been having a difficult time lately." Claire stiffened. Megan looked embarrassed. "Is Grandma mad at us again?" "She's not mad," Claire said quickly. Mark placed his hand over hers. "Your mother means well, Meg. Sometimes older people feel left out and don't know how to express it." There were sympathetic sounds around the table. Someone's cousin said, "That's sad." Aunt Diane asked, "Is she still living alone?" Mark sighed again. "For now." 2 words, "for now." Claire heard them, but she did not challenge him. Not yet. Then the waiter arrived with a padded envelope. "Excuse me," he said, smiling. "The hostess said this was dropped off earlier for the birthday girl." Megan's face brightened. "For me?" The envelope had been delivered by courier from Hope Harbor that afternoon, arranged by Angela so it would arrive during the dinner. It was addressed in my handwriting. Megan Bennett, Bellini's Restaurant, birthday dinner reservation. Claire recognized my handwriting at once. Mark did too. His smile tightened. Megan tore open the envelope before anyone could stop her. Inside was the small white jewelry box wrapped in tissue paper. For half a second there was excitement in her eyes. She was 18 after all. A jewelry box suggested something pretty. Something valuable, something she could show her friends. Then she opened it. The silver house charm lay inside, old and small and dull under the restaurant lights. Megan blinked. "That's it." A few people leaned closer. She lifted the charm between 2 fingers like it was something she had found in a drawer. "Grandma really mailed me this." There was a nervous laugh from someone at the end of the table. Megan looked around, encouraged by the attention, and gave a little shrug. "I mean, it's cute, I guess, in an antique store kind of way." Mark chuckled. That chuckle, Claire later told me, was what made her stomach turn. Because it was not surprised. It was satisfied. "Well," he said, leaning back, "your grandmother has always had sentimental taste." Megan laughed again, sharper this time. "She could have just sent a card." Claire reached for the box. "Megan, don't be rude." "I'm not being rude, it's just—" Megan held up the charm. "It's so tiny. And old." Mark smiled at her as though she had performed exactly as expected. But then Claire turned the padded envelope over, and the color left her face. Hope Harbor. The return address sat in the corner in plain black ink. Claire's fingers froze against the envelope. For several seconds, she did not move. She did not speak. She simply stared at those 2 words as if the restaurant had fallen away and she was standing somewhere else entirely. Because she was. She was 7 years old again, standing in a shelter hallway in borrowed pajamas. She was hearing a woman at the front desk ask if we needed a safe room. She was holding my hand while I tried not to cry. She was remembering the smell of coffee, old carpet laundry soap, and fear. Mark noticed her face. "What is it?" he asked. Claire did not answer. He leaned closer and saw the address. For one brief moment the mask slipped. His eyes changed first. Not wide, not dramatic, but cold and quick like a man who had seen a locked door open unexpectedly. Then he reached across the table. "Let me see that." Claire pulled the envelope back. "Why? It's probably just some mailing service. Lauren has been acting strangely. We don't need to turn Megan's birthday into another episode." "Another episode." The words landed heavily. Megan lowered the charm. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Nothing," Mark said too quickly. "Give me the box." Claire's hand closed around it. The table grew quiet. Aunt Diane looked from Mark to Claire. Someone set down a fork. The waiter, sensing tension, backed away without asking about dessert. Mark lowered his voice. "Claire." Only her name. But there was pressure inside it. A private warning spoken in public. Claire looked at him, then at the address again. "Hope Harbor isn't a mailing service." Mark's jaw flexed. Megan's expression shifted. "What's Hope Harbor?" Claire swallowed. A place people go when they need help. What kind of help? Mark forced a laugh. This is not appropriate dinner conversation. Claire looked at him, then really looked at him maybe for the first time in months. You told me Mom was staying with an old friend. She is. Then why is this from Hope Harbor? I don't know. Maybe she had someone mail it. Maybe she's trying to upset you. You know how emotional she's been. There it was again. The same smooth path. Turn my warning into drama. Turn my fear into manipulation. Turn my absence into selfishness. But this time something in Claire did not follow him. Megan looked down at the charm in her palm. Her laugh had faded. She was beginning to understand that whatever joke she had made had landed in a place much deeper than she intended. Mom, she whispered. Claire did not answer her. She kept staring at Mark. Why did you try to take it? He blinked. What? The package? The box. You reached for it before I even said anything. Mark's face tightened again. I was trying to keep your mother from ruining tonight. My mother isn't here. Exactly. He snapped, then caught himself. The word hung between them. Exactly. Claire's eyes narrowed. For years, she had known Mark as a man who always had an explanation ready. But in that moment, his explanation came too fast, his hand moved too quickly, and his irritation showed too clearly. Megan slowly placed the charm back in the box. I didn't mean to laugh, she said softly. No one responded. Mark stood throwing his napkin onto the table with a controlled little motion. I'm going to pay the bill. No, Claire said. He stopped. I'll take care of it, she continued. Sit down. That was the first time Claire had spoken to him that way in front of anyone. Mark's face flushed, but he sat. The rest of the birthday dinner continued in fragments. Cake was cut, candles were blown out, photos were taken, but the smiles looked strained. Megan kept glancing at the jewelry box beside Claire's plate. Claire kept her purse on her lap with the envelope tucked inside, and Mark kept watching them both. From my room at Hope Harbor, I did not know any of this yet. All I knew was that at 8:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire. Mom, I saw the address. Are you safe? I pressed the phone to my chest and finally let myself cry. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. But because for the first time, my daughter had asked the right question. Claire did not sleep that night. She told me later that she sat in her car outside Bellini's long after everyone else had gone home with Megan quiet in the passenger seat and the little white jewelry box resting between them like something alive. Mark had driven away first angry but controlled, claiming he had an early job estimate the next morning. He kissed Claire's cheek before leaving, but she said his lips barely touched her skin. Don't let your mother do this to us, he whispered. That sentence followed her all the way to the parking lot. Megan did not say much at first. She kept turning the silver charm over in her hand, her red birthday nails bright against the tarnished metal. I shouldn't have laughed, she finally said. Claire stared through the windshield at the restaurant's glowing sign. No, you shouldn't have. I thought it was just Grandma being weird. Claire closed her eyes. Grandma being weird. It was exactly the kind of phrase Mark had planted so often that no one remembered when it had first appeared. Weird, dramatic, forgetful, sensitive, difficult. One word at a time, he had turned me from a person into a problem. Your grandmother isn't weird, Claire said. She's scared. Megan looked over. Of Dad? Claire could not answer. That silence frightened them both. When they got home, Mark was already in the kitchen, pretending to review invoices on his laptop. He looked up when they walked in, his expression soft with manufactured patience. Can we not continue the restaurant drama tonight? He said. Megan deserves to remember her birthday for something other than Lauren's performance. Claire held her purse tighter. Mom didn't perform anything. She wasn't there. That was the performance, Mark replied, sending a mysterious package from some shelter. Come on, Claire. You're smarter than this. Megan flinched at the word shelter. Claire saw it. Mark did too. His voice softened immediately. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know this is uncomfortable. Your grandmother has been under stress, and stress makes people do strange things. Megan looked at the floor. Claire went upstairs with the envelope still in her purse and locked it in her nightstand drawer. She did not open the charm. Not yet. I had asked her to pay attention to the package, but fear is not always quick. Sometimes it circles the truth before it can touch it. The next morning, Claire drove to Hope Harbor alone. She told Mark she had an early staff meeting at the dental clinic. It was the first lie she had told him in years, and she said it made her hands shake so badly she spilled coffee on her blouse before leaving the house. But she still went. Hope Harbor looked different in daylight. Less like a memory and more like a real building with a brick walkway, a blue awning, and a row of pansies blooming beside the door. Claire sat in her car for several minutes before she could make herself get out. She had not been back there since she was a child. Some places do not need to be dramatic to haunt you. They only need to hold the version of you that was once helpless. When she stepped inside, the lobby smelled the same. Coffee, laundry soap, old carpet. Claire told me later that the smell nearly broke her. For a moment, she was 7 years old again. Her legs were cold because she had left home in pajama shorts. Her hair was tangled. I was holding her hand with one hand and our emergency bag with the other. A woman behind the desk was asking questions in a voice so gentle it made me cry harder. Claire had buried that night under decades of normal life. College, marriage, motherhood, work, bills, grocery lists, parent-teacher conferences. But memory does not die because we stop speaking to it. It waits. A receptionist greeted her kindly. "Can I help you?" Claire swallowed. "My name is Claire Bennett. I'm looking for my mother, Lauren Mitchell." The receptionist's expression did not change, but her eyes became careful. "I'm sorry," she said. "We can't confirm whether someone is here." "I understand." Claire opened her purse and pulled out the padded envelope. "She sent this to my daughter last night, from this address. I just need to know if she's safe." The receptionist looked at the envelope, then at Claire's face. "Please have a seat." Claire sat in the same lobby where she had once leaned against my side and asked if we were going home soon. She remembered the vending machine near the hallway. She remembered a woman bringing her a blanket with tiny yellow flowers. She remembered me kneeling in front of her, holding both her shoulders, saying, "We are going to be okay." Back then, she had believed me. Now she wondered when she had stopped. After a few minutes, Angela Reed came out. Claire stood. "Yes, I'm Angela. Would you come with me?" Angela led her into a small consultation room with a round table and a box of tissues in the center. Claire sat down, still clutching the envelope like a passport. "Is my mother here?" she asked. Angela folded her hands. "I can't disclose anyone's location without consent." Claire's eyes filled. "Then she is here." Angela did not answer. Claire covered her mouth. "Oh, God." "Your mother asked me to give you something if you came in person," Angela said. She opened a file folder and took out a sealed envelope. Claire recognized my handwriting immediately. "For my daughter when she is ready to remember?" Claire began crying before she even opened it. Inside was a letter I had written the night before Megan's birthday dinner. I had rewritten it 3 times, trying not to sound desperate, trying not to sound angry, trying to speak to the part of my daughter that still knew me. Claire read it right there at the table. "My sweet Claire. If you are reading this, then you saw the return address and some part of you remembered what Hope Harbor means. I know you are frightened. I know Mark has told you I'm confused, emotional, forgetful, and difficult. I know because he has been saying those things to me too, only in smaller doses for months. Please do not confront him yet. Please do not tell him you came here. Please do not dismiss what I'm about to ask simply because it is coming from your mother. Look closely at Megan's charm. Not at its age, not at its shine. Look closer than that. You were once a little girl holding my hand in this building. You knew then that when I said we needed safety, I meant it. I need you to believe that I mean it now. I love you. I have always loved you. But love cannot help us if we keep handing the truth to the person who is hiding it. Mom." By the time Claire finished reading, tears had dropped onto the paper. Angela slid the tissue box toward her. Claire shook her head ashamed. "She tried to tell me." Angela's voice was gentle. "It sounds like she tried very hard. I told her to see a doctor. She told me that. The words did not accuse, but they hurt anyway." Claire pressed the letter to her chest. "I thought I was helping." "That is how manipulation works," Angela said. "It often uses your goodness against you." Claire looked up. "Is Mark dangerous?" Angela paused. "I think your mother is right to be careful." That was not a yes. It was worse. Because it was professional caution wrapped around fear. Claire opened her purse and took out the jewelry box. For the first time, she examined the charm without embarrassment, without Megan's laughter, without Mark's voice filling the room. The little silver house sat in her palm, worn smooth by years of touch. "She gave this to Megan when she was little," Claire whispered. Angela leaned forward. "May I?" Claire handed it to her. Angela turned it over carefully, then smiled faintly. "There's a seam." Claire blinked. "What?" "Here, under the roofline." Angela pressed gently with her thumbnail. Nothing happened. She tried again at a different angle. A tiny click sounded in the room. Claire stopped breathing. The roof of the little house shifted open. Inside, tucked into a space no wider than a fingernail, was a tiny memory card. Claire stared at it. For a second, neither woman moved. Then Claire began to cry in a way she had not cried since she was a child. Not pretty tears, not quiet tears. Deep, shaking sobs that seemed to come from the oldest part of her, because all at once the truth became undeniable. The gift Megan had laughed at was not a trinket. It was not a sentimental old woman's attempt to feel included. It was evidence. It was warning. It was trust. My daughter put one hand over her mouth and whispered, "Mom, what did he do to you?" Angela gently closed the charm and placed the memory card into a small protective sleeve. "I recommend you do not view this here alone," she said. "Take it somewhere private, somewhere Mark cannot walk in." Claire nodded, wiping her face. "Megan needs to see it too," she said. "She needs to understand what she laughed at." Angela met her eyes. "Then be careful how you bring her in. Shame can make people defensive. Let truth do the work." Before Claire left, she asked the question I had been waiting for since the night before. "Can you tell my mother something?" Angela nodded. "Tell her I remember." When Angela came to my room later and repeated those words, I sat down on the bed because my legs would not hold me. Tell her I remember. It was not forgiveness. It was not safety. It was not justice. But it was a door opening. And for the first time since I had found Mark's petition in my desk, I felt something I had nearly forgotten. Hope. Claire did not take the memory card home right away. That was the smartest decision she made. Angela had warned her not to view it anywhere Mark could interrupt, and for once, Claire obeyed fear instead of explaining it away. She drove from Hope Harbor to a small public library branch near Kettering, one she had not visited in years. She parked in the far corner of the lot and sat there gripping the steering wheel until the first wave of panic passed. Then she called Megan. Megan answered on the second ring, her voice low. "Mom, where are you at home?" "Dad left for work." "Are you sure I heard his truck leave?" Claire closed her eyes. "I need you to pack your laptop and meet me at the Woodbury Library. Don't tell him. Don't text him. Don't leave a note." There was a small silence. "Is this about Grandma's charm?" "Yes." Megan's voice became smaller. "Did you find something?" Claire looked down at the protective sleeve on the passenger seat. The tiny memory card inside looked impossibly ordinary, no bigger than a fingernail, yet it seemed to carry enough weight to crack their entire lives open. "Yes," Claire said. "I think I did." 20 minutes later, Megan walked into the library wearing jeans, a college sweatshirt, and no makeup. She looked younger than she had the night before. Without the birthday dress, the styled hair, the bright lipstick, and the careless laugh, she looked like a frightened girl trying to become an adult too quickly. Claire was waiting in the study room with frosted glass walls and a round table. She had chosen the room because the door closed, but people were still nearby, safe enough to speak, public enough not to feel trapped. Megan set her laptop down carefully. "Is Grandma okay?" Claire's throat tightened. "I think she's safe for now." "For now, Megan. Before we look at this, I need you to understand something. Whatever is on this card, we do not react by calling Mark." Megan blinked. "You mean Dad?" Claire's face tightened at the word. Mark was not Megan's biological father, but he had helped raise her since middle school. She called him Dad because he had earned that place, or because everyone had assumed he had. Claire did not correct her. "Not yet." "I mean Mark," she said quietly. "Until we know what's happening, we have to be careful." Megan's eyes filled with tears. "Is he the reason Grandma left?" Claire inserted the memory card into a small adapter Angela had provided, then connected it to Megan's laptop. "I think your grandmother is trying to show us." The folder opened. There were 5 main files. Bank_records forged, _signatures, emails, _Mark guardianship, _draft audio. Megan stared at the screen. "Oh my God." Claire's hand hovered over the trackpad. For a moment, she could not make herself click. Because before evidence is opened, there is still a tiny space where life might remain what you thought it was. One click, and that space disappears. Megan whispered, "Mom." Claire clicked bank_records. Scanned statements filled the screen. At first, they looked like ordinary pages account numbers, partly blacked out dates, balances, transaction lines. Then Claire saw the transfers circled in red. $17,500 from Lauren Mitchell's savings. A smaller transfer before that. Then another. Each one labeled electronically authorized. One receiving account was tied to Bennett Home Solutions. Megan covered her mouth. Claire could not breathe. "He said his business was doing fine," Claire whispered. Megan leaned closer. "Maybe Grandma gave it to him." Claire opened another file. Forged _signatures contained side-by-side images. Lauren's real signature from old documents on the left. The signatures used on the home equity application, electronic banking changes, and authorization forms on the right. I had marked each difference carefully, pressure spacing the shape of the L, the curve of the M, the lifted ending that was missing. Megan began crying silently. "That's not her signature," she said. Claire looked at her. "You can tell Grandma signs every birthday card the same way." The end of Mitchell always goes up. The detail broke Claire. Such a small thing. Such an intimate thing. Her daughter had remembered something about me that even she had nearly forgotten. And yet the night before, Megan had laughed at the charm because Mark's voice had taught her to look at the surface. Claire opened emails_Mark next. There were screenshots and printed copies of messages from Mark's business email to a financing representative. Most of the language was careful, but one email made Claire's hands turn cold. My mother-in-law is elderly and easily overwhelmed. I am assisting with her financial decisions as the family's point person. We need to move quickly before her condition worsens and creates delays. Megan read it twice. She doesn't have a condition, she said. No, Claire whispered. She doesn't. Another email mentioned a pending application for an emergency guardianship review. Another referenced access to liquid funds once authority is granted. Another asked whether a home equity line could be expedited if the homeowner was medically vulnerable. Megan pushed back from the table. Stop. I feel sick. Claire wanted to stop too. But truth is not kind just because we are tired. She opened guardianship_draft. There it was. The document I had found hidden beneath the Medicare brochures. My name typed in black letters. My supposed symptoms listed like crimes confusion, paranoia, forgetfulness, hostility toward assistance, poor financial judgment. Claire scrolled down slowly. Then she froze. Beside the petitioner section was Mark Bennett's name. Below that was a blank line labeled supporting family member. Claire Bennett. Megan looked at her mother. He wanted you to sign it. Claire's voice came out thin. He never told me. But even as she said it, she remembered. Mark placing a folder near her coffee one morning and saying, we may need to discuss long-term care options for your mom. Mark telling her, if Lauren fights, help, we need to be prepared. Mark saying, you don't have to decide now, but you should think about what's best for everyone. Everyone. Claire pressed both hands to her face. I almost believed him, she said. Megan reached across the table and touched her wrist. Mom, you didn't sign. No, but I might have. That confession hung between them, painful and honest. Then Megan pointed to the final folder. Audio. Claire hesitated longer this time. The file name read Mark_Kitchen_April_18. She clicked. At first there was only static, then the faint sound of my kitchen clock ticking. A chair scraping. Mark's voice smooth and controlled. Lauren, this is exactly what I mean. You're making everything adversarial. Then my voice quieter but firm. No, I'm making it accurate. Megan began to sob at the sound of me. The recording continued. Mark spoke about involving Claire. He said I was overwhelmed. He said I did not understand documents. Then came the part I had barely remembered recording because my hands had been shaking inside my cardigan pocket. Mark's voice lowered. You need to be very careful. The more you accuse people, the more concerned everyone becomes about your judgment. My voice, is that a threat, Mark? It's a fact. If you keep acting unstable, people will have to step in. The room went silent except for the tiny laptop speakers. Then Mark said the sentence that changed everything. Once the court sees what Claire sees, you won't be in charge of any of this anyway. Megan made a broken sound. Claire's face went white. The audio ended there. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Megan whispered, he knew. Claire nodded slowly. He knew exactly what he was doing. Megan pushed the laptop away as if it had burned her. I laughed at it. What the charm? Her voice cracked. Grandma sent us this because she was scared and I laughed at it in front of everyone. Claire stood and came around the table, pulling her daughter into her arms. Megan resisted for 1 second, then collapsed against her. I laughed, she cried. I made him think we were on his side. Claire held her tightly, but her own tears fell into Megan's hair. We were on his side, Claire whispered. That's what he made happen. Megan pulled back suddenly. What if he used your name too? Claire stared at her. The thought had been waiting at the edge of her mind, but hearing Megan say it made it real. Claire returned to the laptop and began searching through the files again. In the bank records folder, there was a subfolder marked household_accounts. She opened it and found screenshots from accounts she recognized shared credit lines, tax documents, insurance forms. Then she saw it. An electronic authorization form for a short-term business loan connected to Mark's company. Co-signer Claire Bennett. Her stomach dropped. I didn't sign this, she said. Megan leaned over her shoulder. Mom, Claire opened another file. Then another. Her electronic signature appeared on more than one document. Not many. Not enough to fully understand the damage, but enough. Enough to know that Mark had not only built his scheme around me, he had placed Claire inside it. Megan stepped away from the table, trembling. So if he got caught, Claire finished the thought for her. He could say I knew. Outside the study room, the library continued as if nothing had happened. A printer hummed. A child laughed near the picture books. Someone whispered near the reference desk. Ordinary life moving calmly around a family being split open by truth. Claire copied the files onto a second drive Angela had given her. Then she shut the laptop and held the tiny charm in her palm. It looked different now. Still old, still tarnished, still small, but no one in that room saw it as cheap anymore. Megan wiped her face and looked at her mother. What do we do? Claire closed her fingers around the charm. We do exactly what Grandma told us, she said. We don't confront him yet. Her voice was shaking, but something had changed beneath it. Fear was still there. Guilt was still there. But now there was anger too. Not loud anger. Not careless anger. The focused kind. The kind that finally understands the difference between keeping peace and protecting a predator. Claire went home that afternoon with a plan and a face that had to pretend nothing had changed. That she later told me was the hardest acting she had ever done. Not because she had never hidden pain before. Women do that every day. She had smiled through migraines at work, smiled through bills she did not know how to pay, smiled through arguments she did not want Megan to hear. But this was different. This time she had to smile at the man who had stolen from her mother, the man who had forged documents, the man who had already started using her name. When Claire and Megan pulled into the driveway, Mark's truck was there. Megan went still. I thought he was at work, she whispered. Claire looked at the truck, then at her daughter. Listen to me. We are not afraid in front of him, not visibly. I don't know if I can do that. You can, because your grandmother did it for weeks. That made Megan sit a little straighter. They entered the house through the garage. Mark was in the kitchen standing at the island with his phone in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. He looked up with a smile so normal that for half a second Claire's mind rejected everything she had seen on the memory card. That is one of the cruelest things about betrayal. It often wears the same familiar face afterward. There are my girls, he said. You both vanished this morning. Claire set her purse on a chair, careful not to clutch it. The backup drive was hidden in the lining beneath a loose seam Angela had suggested using. Megan wanted to get out of the house, she said. Birthday emotions. Megan looked down, letting her hair fall forward. Mark studied her. Still upset about last night? A little, Megan said. You shouldn't be. Your grandmother put you in an awkward position. That wasn't your fault. Megan's hands curled at her sides, but Claire spoke first. Let's not talk about Mom right now. Mark's eyes shifted to her. Fine with me. I've said all I need to say. That was a lie. Men like Mark were never finished speaking. They only waited for better timing. For the next 2 days, Claire played the role he expected. She went to work. She answered his texts. She cooked pasta on Tuesday night and asked whether he had any big jobs scheduled. She listened while he complained about a client who wanted a discount. She laughed softly when he made a joke about people who don't understand business. But beneath that ordinary routine, she began gathering proof, not dramatically, not carelessly. She started with the file cabinet in the downstairs office. Mark kept most household paperwork there because, as he often said, he was better with systems. Claire waited until he left for a supply run, then opened drawer after drawer with trembling hands. Mortgage documents, insurance papers, tax returns, business receipts, folders labeled by year. For the first hour, she found nothing unusual. That almost frightened her more. The house looked normal. The files looked normal. Their family photographs on the office wall looked normal. Megan's graduation picture sat beside a framed certificate Mark had received from the local Chamber of Commerce. Respectability everywhere, truth nowhere. Then in the back of a drawer under old appliance manuals, Claire found a folder labeled LM. Her breath caught. Inside were copies of my driver's license, my property tax records, bank printouts, and pages of handwritten notes about my assets, my home value, estimated equity, savings balance, monthly income, insurance policies, even the make and model of my car. Claire had to sit down. Her husband had made a file on her mother like a target. She photographed every page with her phone, then put the folder back exactly where she found it. She had learned that from Angela, do not let him know what you know. That evening, Megan became their second set of eyes. At first, Claire did not want to involve her any deeper. Megan was 18, technically an adult, but still her child. But Megan insisted. I helped make Grandma feel alone, she said. I'm not sitting here doing nothing now. Claire wanted to argue, but the pain in Megan's voice stopped her. So Megan listened. Teenagers are often underestimated because they look distracted. But Megan knew how to disappear into a room with her phone and headphones and still hear everything. Mark had grown used to talking around her, especially when he thought she was absorbed in videos or messages. On Wednesday afternoon, while Claire was at work, Megan sat on the living room couch pretending to scroll through college housing options. Mark was in the kitchen on a call pacing near the back door. At first, his voice was low. Megan heard only pieces. "No, I said Friday. Funds are pending. Old situation is being handled." Then his voice sharpened. "Because the old woman is making noise, that's why." Megan's thumb froze over her phone. She turned the volume on her headphones down completely and opened her voice memo app. Mark continued pacing. "No, she won't be a problem much longer. Once the petition moves, access gets cleaner." Megan's heart pounded so hard, she worried he could hear it. A male voice crackled faintly through the phone, too distant to understand. Mark laughed once bitterly. Claire will sign what I tell her to sign once she understands her mother is unstable." Megan's eyes filled with tears, but she kept the phone angled toward the kitchen. Then Mark said, "I just need the final transfer to go through before anyone starts asking questions." "Final transfer." Megan stopped breathing. Mark ended the call and walked into the living room. She looked down just in time, pretending to type. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Looking at dorm stuff." He came closer. With headphones on, she shrugged. "I wasn't listening to anything. Just don't like silence." He stood over her for several seconds. Megan forced herself to look annoyed instead of terrified. What Mark smiled. "Nothing. You okay?" "Yeah. You seemed emotional after your grandmother's stunt." Megan swallowed. "I just felt bad that I laughed." His smile faded. "Don't let people guilt you for having a normal reaction." Lauren knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted everyone uncomfortable. Megan looked at him then. Really looked. For the first time, she saw the ugliness beneath his confidence. Not because his face had changed, but because her understanding had. Every sentence sounded different now. Every gentle explanation had a hook hidden inside it. "Maybe," she said. Mark seemed satisfied. When he walked away, Megan texted Claire only one sentence. He said, "Final transfer." Claire called Angela from the supply closet at the dental clinic. By then, Angela had already arranged for a legal advocate to review the files from the memory card. But this new phrase changed the urgency. Final transfer meant Mark was still moving money. It meant whatever had happened before was not the end. "Do you have access to shared accounts?" Angela asked. "Yes," Claire whispered. "Some. Check them from a secure device, not your home computer, not your phone if he has access to your passwords." Claire thought of the library. After work, she drove there again. This time, she logged into every account she could remember, checking savings credit cards, Megan's college fund insurance portals, tax software, Mark's business payment system, where her email was still listed as a recovery contact. One discovery led to another. Mark's business was not healthy. It was collapsing. There were unpaid vendor invoices, a lawsuit threat from a supplier, credit card balances far higher than Claire had known, a rejected business loan application, past due notices. One document from a financing company referred to insufficient collateral. Collateral. Claire thought of my house. Then she found a spreadsheet in Mark's cloud storage because he had forgotten she still had access through an old shared family folder. The file was titled Projected Recovery Plan. It sounded like business. It was theft in columns and rows. Expected HELOC draw from LM property. Temporary use of MB Education Fund. Short-term bridge through CB authorization. Claire stared at the initials. LM Lauren Mitchell. MB Megan Bennett. CB Claire Bennett. 3 women. 3 sources of money. 3 lives reduced to initials in Mark's plan to save himself. Claire printed the spreadsheet at the library and took photos as backup. When she got home that night, she felt as if she were walking into a house built over a sinkhole. Mark was in the garage. Megan was upstairs. Claire slipped the printed pages into the lining of an old winter coat in the hall closet. Then she made dinner, chicken, rice, green beans, ordinary food for an impossible evening. At the table, Mark talked about work as if nothing were wrong. Megan kept her eyes on her plate. Claire nodded at the right times, asked short questions, and tried not to imagine the folder marked LM hidden in his office. Halfway through dinner, Mark looked at Claire. "You changed the laptop password." Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Megan looked down quickly. Claire forced a confused expression. "What? The household laptop. The password is different." "Oh." She took a sip of water. "It made me reset after an update. You didn't tell me. I didn't think I needed to." The room cooled. Mark smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "We share that computer." "I know. I'll write it down later. I need it tonight." "For what?" His gaze held hers. "Work." Claire's mind raced. If she refused too hard, he would know. If she gave him the new password, he might find what she had searched even if she had tried to cover her tracks. So she chose the middle. After dinner, she said, Megan has to finish her housing application first. Megan looked up startled, then quickly nodded. Yeah, deadline. Mark studied them both. For the first time, Claire saw suspicion looking back at her. Not certainty yet, but suspicion. After dinner, Megan took the laptop upstairs and began clearing browser history downloads. Recent documents, everything Angela had told them to remove. Claire stayed in the kitchen washing dishes while Mark stood behind her too close. You've been different, he said. She kept scrubbing a plate that was already clean. I'm tired. Because of Lauren, because of everything. He leaned against the counter. You know I'm only trying to protect this family. Claire turned off the faucet. For one dangerous second, she wanted to say, from what? The truth. Instead, she dried her hands and looked at him with the tired face of a woman he still believed he could manage. I know, she said. The lie tasted bitter, but it bought her one more night. And one more night Angela had told her might be the difference between stopping Mark and watching him disappear with everything. By Thursday morning, Claire understood that Mark's plan was no longer a possibility. It was already in motion. She had spent most of the night sitting on the bathroom floor with the shower running, not because she needed to wash, but because it was the only place in the house where she could cry without Mark hearing. The printed spreadsheet was hidden in the lining of her winter coat. Megan's recording was saved in 3 places. The tiny memory card from My Silver Charm was now locked inside a small metal cash box beneath Megan's bed. But none of that stopped the final transfer. Not yet. At 7:12 that morning, while Claire was pouring coffee in the kitchen, her phone buzzed with a message from Angela Reed. Call me from somewhere private. Urgent. Claire's hand tightened around the mug. Mark was standing at the stove making eggs as if he were any ordinary husband on any ordinary weekday morning. Everything okay? He asked. Claire turned the phone face down. Work. He studied her for half a second too long. Problems at the clinic. When are there not problems at the clinic? That small joke bought her a smile. Mark turned back to the stove. Tell them you deserve a raise. Claire forced herself to laugh. Megan came downstairs a few minutes later, pale and quiet. She had barely slept. When Mark wished her good morning, she answered with one word and kept moving toward the pantry. You feeling better? He asked her. Yeah. You still upset about your grandmother? Megan's fingers tightened around a cereal box. I don't want to talk about Grandma. Mark gave Claire a look as if Megan's pain were my fault. Claire swallowed her anger with her coffee. At 8:03, Claire left for work, but instead of driving straight to the dental clinic, she pulled into the parking lot of a pharmacy 2 miles away. She parked near the back, locked the doors, and called Angela. Angela answered immediately. Claire, the legal advocate, reviewed the documents last night. Based on the bank records and the spreadsheet you found there may be another pending transaction. Claire closed her eyes. How soon? We don't know for certain. But the language in Mark's recovery plan suggests Friday. Tomorrow. Yes. Claire pressed her forehead against the steering wheel. Angela continued, calm but firm. We need to know what accounts he may be targeting. Your mother's home equity, Megan's education fund, and any shared accounts connected to your name. Megan's college fund, Claire whispered. That was in the spreadsheet. I thought he only listed it. I didn't know he could access it. Can he? Claire's stomach dropped. Years earlier, when Megan was 14, Claire and Mark had reorganized some financial accounts. Mark had suggested putting himself down as an authorized manager on Megan's college savings because he was better at forms and because Claire was always busy. It had seemed practical at the time. He had smiled and said, "This is what dads do." Now Claire could barely breathe. "Yes," she said, "he might." There was a short silence. "Then you need to contact the institution immediately," Angela said, "from a secure line. Ask for a freeze or fraud alert if they allow it. I'll connect you with our financial abuse advocate. Do not do it from home." Claire looked at the pharmacy doors at people walking in for prescriptions and greeting cards living normal lives under fluorescent lights. "My mother could lose her house," she said. Angela's voice softened. "We are going to try very hard not to let that happen." "And Megan? We will try to protect her too." Claire covered her mouth. 3 generations. That phrase had not left her since she saw Mark's spreadsheet. LMCBMB. My house. Claire's name. Megan's future. Mark had not seen us as family. He had seen us as available resources, each woman holding something he thought he could take if he pressed the right emotional bruise. By noon, Claire had called the college savings plan from a private room at the clinic. Her office manager, sensing something was wrong, had let her use the small break room and told everyone else not to interrupt. The representative on the phone verified Claire's identity, then reviewed the account. "There was an online request initiated yesterday," he said. Claire's knees weakened. What kind of request? A distribution request. How much? $28,000. Claire gripped the edge of the counter. That was nearly half of Megan's college money. Has it gone through? It is pending review. I did not authorize it. There is an authorized user listed. Mark Bennett. Yes, ma'am. Claire's voice shook. I need you to freeze it. Now. The representative began explaining procedures, fraud forms, verification steps. Claire wanted to scream at him to stop using polite words while her daughter's future was hanging by a thread. But she answered every question. She submitted the verbal fraud report. She requested a written confirmation. She asked that no transfer be completed until the ownership and authorization were reviewed. When the call ended, she slid down the wall and sat on the floor. Her office manager, Janet, knocked softly and opened the door just enough to see her. Claire wiped her face. I'm sorry, I just need a minute. Janet stepped inside and closed the door. She was a practical woman in her late 50s who had known Claire for 12 years and had little patience for nonsense. Is this a husband problem? She asked. Claire looked up startled. Janet's expression did not change. I've had one of those. Tell me whether you need privacy, a ride, or a witness. That simple offer almost broke Claire again. A witness, Claire whispered. Maybe soon. By late afternoon, Angela had arranged the meeting. Claire and Megan were to come to Hope Harbor the next day after Mark left for a scheduled supplier appointment. I would be there along with Angela and a legal advocate named David Miller who specialized in elder financial exploitation. The goal was to file emergency paperwork before Mark could complete the final transfer or move forward with the guardianship petition. But there was one problem. Mark's supplier appointment was not real. Megan discovered it that evening. She had been in the hallway upstairs when Mark took another call in the garage. This time, she did not need to sneak close. He was angry enough for his voice to carry through the door. I don't care what the bank said. Push it again tomorrow morning. A pause. No. The daughter is manageable. Megan froze. Then Mark laughed bitterly. The girl? She's 18. She cries over everything. I'm not worried about her. Megan's eyes filled, but she kept listening. The old woman is the issue. If she talked to someone, we move faster. I want the draw and the education fund handled before close of business. Another pause. Then I'll file the petition Monday if I have to. Megan backed away from the garage door with her phone recording in her hand, shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. For years, she had wanted Mark's approval. She had laughed at his jokes. She had trusted his version of things. She had thought of him as the parent who understood modern life better than her mother, better than me, better than anyone sentimental or old-fashioned. Now she heard what she was to him. The girl. A crying obstacle. A fun to drain. She went to Claire's room and shut the door. He's doing it tomorrow, she whispered. Claire listened to the recording once, then again. With every word, her face became less frightened and more still. What do we do? Megan asked. Claire picked up her phone. We don't wait until tomorrow afternoon. She called Angela immediately. By 8 that night, the plan changed. Claire and Megan would leave the house early the next morning under the excuse of visiting the college financial aid office. Angela would request emergency contact with the bank's fraud department as soon as it opened. David Miller would begin drafting the court filing before we even sat in the same room. That night at dinner, Mark seemed almost cheerful. Too cheerful. He poured Claire a glass of wine without asking, asked Megan about college orientation, and even suggested they all take a weekend trip once this family stress settled down. We need something normal, he said, cutting into his steak. All of us. Claire looked at him across the table and wondered how many women had sat across from danger while being told it was normal. Megan barely ate. Mark noticed. You okay, kiddo? Megan nodded. You sure you've been jumpy? I'm just tired. He smiled. Big emotions this week. Claire placed her fork down. She said she's tired. The sentence was simple. The tone was not. Mark looked at Claire. For a second, no one moved. Then he smiled. Of course. But later, after Megan went upstairs, Mark followed Claire into the laundry room. You're turning her against me, he said quietly. Claire lifted wet towels from the washer with shaking hands. What are you talking about, Megan? She barely looks at me. She's upset. Because of Lauren. Because a lot has happened. He stepped closer. What exactly has happened, Claire? She turned, holding the laundry basket between them like a shield. My daughter turned 18. My mother disappeared. My husband keeps telling me not to ask questions. That's what happened. His eyes narrowed. It was the first honest sentence she had said to him in days. Maybe too honest. Mark's voice dropped. Be careful. Claire felt the old fear rise. The same fear that had made her explain him away for years. The same fear that had made her doubt me because doubt was easier than disruption. But this time my letter was in her purse. Look closely. Remember, do not confront him yet. She looked away first deliberately as if surrendering. I'm tired, she said. I don't want to fight. Mark watched her for another long moment, then he stepped back. Good, he said, because neither do I. But Claire knew now that Mark did not call it fighting when he controlled the room. He only called it fighting when someone reached for the door. Upstairs, Megan texted her mother from beneath her blanket. I packed the charm. Claire read it in the hallway and closed her eyes. The little silver house was going back to Hope Harbor, and this time it would bring all three of us with it. The next morning I woke before sunrise in my small room at Hope Harbor. For a few seconds I did not remember where I was. I reached toward the left side of the bed the way I still sometimes did when dreams made Robert feel close, but my hand touched only a thin blanket and a metal bed frame. Then the ceiling came into focus, plain white with a small water stain near the corner, and everything returned. Mark, the forged signature, the guardianship petition, the stolen money, Claire's message, tell her I remember. I sat up slowly and pressed both feet to the floor, waiting for my body to understand that this was not another ordinary day of hiding. This was the day my daughter and granddaughter were coming to me. Helen knocked softly at 7. You awake? Yes. She opened the door carrying 2 coffees and a paper bag with blueberry muffins. I thought you might need something familiar. The smell nearly undid me. Blueberry. Megan's favorite pancake flavor when she was little. The kind of memory that arrives with no warning and no mercy. I took the coffee, but my hands trembled around the cup. What if they change their minds? I asked. Helen sat on the edge of the chair by the window. Then we keep going. What if Mark stops them? Angela has a plan for that too. I looked at her. You make it sound simple. No, Helen said. I make it sound possible. There's a difference. At 8:30, Angela came in with David Miller, the legal advocate she had told me about. David was a calm man in his 50s with reading glasses tucked into his shirt pocket and a leather folder under one arm. He spoke gently, but there was a steadiness to him that made me feel less like a frightened old woman and more like a person with rights. We're preparing 2 emergency requests, he explained. One to stop unauthorized financial transfers connected to your home and accounts. Another to challenge any guardianship filing before it gains momentum. Can Mark still file it? He can try, David said. But evidence changes the room. I thought about that sentence for a long time. Evidence changes the room. For weeks, Mark had controlled the room by controlling the story. He made my fear look like confusion, my questions look like paranoia, my caution look like decline. But proof had weight. Proof could sit on a table even when people wanted to look away. At 9:17, Angela's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and then at me. They're here. I stood too fast. The room tilted and Helen reached for my elbow. Breathe, she whispered. But how does a mother breathe when the child she thought she had lost to someone else's lies is standing on the other side of a door? Angela led me to a consultation room at the end of the hallway. It had soft gray chairs, a round table, and a small framed print on the wall that said, "Safety begins with being believed." I stared at those words because I was afraid to stare at the door. Then it opened. Claire walked in first. She looked older than she had a week before. Not in years, but in knowledge. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen, and her mouth trembled the moment she saw me. Behind her came Megan, clutching her backpack against her chest. For 1 second, none of us moved. Then Claire whispered, "Mom." That one word broke whatever strength I had been pretending to have. She crossed the room and reached for me, but stopped halfway as if she no longer knew whether she had the right. That hurt more than the hug might have. I stepped forward. Claire fell into my arms. She cried the way she had cried as a little girl at Hope Harbor, with her forehead pressed against my shoulder and her hands gripping the back of my sweater. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have listened." I closed my eyes and held her. I wanted to say it was all right, but it was not all right. So I said the truest thing I could. "I'm glad you came." She cried harder. Megan stood near the doorway, silent and shaking. When Claire finally stepped back, Megan looked at me with a face full of shame. "Grandma," she whispered. My heart twisted. She opened her backpack and took out the small white jewelry box. Her hands were trembling so badly that Claire helped her hold it. "I laughed at it," Megan said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I laughed at your gift." I looked at the box, then at her. "Yes," I said softly. "You did." She flinched, but I did not say it cruelly. I said it because pretending pain did not happen is how families rot from the inside. Megan nodded quickly, accepting it. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "No," I said. "You didn't, but you didn't ask either." Her face crumpled. Claire closed her eyes. I took a breath. "Megan, I love you. That has not changed, but love should not make us careless with each other. I know she sobbed. I know now. I reached for her then, and she came to me like the child she had once been. For a moment I felt her little again, all elbows and tears, smelling faintly of shampoo and cold morning air. Angela gave us several minutes before gently bringing us back to the table. We need to move quickly, she said. David opened his folder. Claire placed the printed spreadsheet on the table. Megan handed over her phone with the garage recording. Angela added the memory card files, my bank documents, the forged signature comparisons, the guardianship draft, and the recording from my kitchen. Piece by piece, the story became visible. Not emotional, not dramatic. Visible. Claire watched as David organized the documents into categories: unauthorized transfers, forgery, identity misuse, attempted guardianship exploitation, pending transfer risk. Megan sat beside me, her knee bouncing under the table. Every so often she glanced at me as if checking whether I was still there. I was. That mattered. David looked at Claire. The college savings account freeze was a critical step. The institution confirmed a pending distribution request. Claire nodded. $28,000. And your mother's home equity, Angela answered. The bank flagged the application but has not yet confirmed whether a draw request is pending. We are trying to reach the fraud department directly. My stomach tightened. My house, I said quietly. David looked at me. Lauren, we are going to ask for emergency protective orders around the property, but we should assume Mark may act today. Claire's face went pale again, he said before close of business. Megan looked down at her phone. He also said he would file the petition Monday if he had to. David made a note. Then Angela turned to me. Lauren, you mentioned one more piece of evidence. Something Mark doesn't know about. The room went still. Claire looked at me. There's more, I nodded. For a moment I hesitated. Not because I was unsure, but because this last piece came from a place I had not wanted my daughter or granddaughter to see. It showed Mark not merely as greedy, but as cruel. It showed the voice he used when no one else was listening. I reached into my purse and took out my old phone. The kitchen recording was not the only one, I said. Claire's hand went to her mouth. I opened a file dated 2 days after I had found the guardianship petition. Mark had come to my house unexpectedly. I had turned on the recorder before letting him in because by then I knew I needed to document everything. My finger hovered over the screen. You need to hear this, I said. But it will hurt. Claire sat straighter. Play it. So I did. At first the recording captured my front door closing, then Mark's voice low and angry. You went through private documents. My voice answered. They were in my house. You don't know what you're doing, Lauren. I know what my name looks like. Then Mark laughed. Not the public laugh. Not the charming laugh. This one was sharp and ugly. You really think Claire is going to choose your version over mine? No one in the room moved. The recording continued. Mark said, You are an old woman living alone with too much money and too much pride. I tried to make this easy, but if you keep pushing, I will make sure every person in that family believes you are falling apart. My recorded voice shook when I answered. You stole from me. Mark replied, I borrowed from a future that was going to come to this family anyway. Megan began to cry silently. Then came the final sentence. And when the court gives Claire and me control, you can sit in that house and be grateful we didn't put you somewhere worse. I stopped the recording. The room was silent except for Claire's breathing. Then my daughter stood so abruptly her chair scraped against the floor. I'll testify, she said. David looked up. Claire, no. I will testify. I will sign whatever statement you need. I will tell the court he lied to me, manipulated me, and tried to use my name. I will not let him do this to my mother. Megan stood too, wiping her face with both hands. Me too, she said. I heard him. I recorded him. I'll tell them. I looked at them both, my daughter and my granddaughter, standing beside me in the same shelter that had once held Claire as a frightened child. Something inside me loosened. Not healed. Not yet, but loosened. Angela nodded. Then we move now. For the next hour, the room became a battlefield of paper phone calls, signatures, and sworn statements. Claire called the clinic and told Janet she would not be in. Megan emailed her college orientation office with an excuse. David contacted the court clerk. Angela reached the bank fraud department and requested immediate escalation. At one point, Claire reached for my hand under the table. I don't expect you to forgive me today, she whispered. I squeezed her fingers. Good, I said softly. Because forgiveness without change is just another way of asking someone to be quiet. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'll change, she said. I wanted to believe her. For the first time in a long while, I thought maybe I could. By noon, Mark knew something had shifted. He did not know everything yet. That was what made the next hours so dangerous. A man who knows he has been exposed may run. A man who only suspects he is losing control will often push harder, testing every wall, every silence, every trembling answer. Claire had gone back home with Megan after our meeting at Hope Harbor because Angela and David believed it was important not to make Mark panic before the emergency filings were submitted. I hated letting them return to that house. Every part of me wanted to keep my daughter and granddaughter behind Hope Harbor's locked doors where coffee brewed in the lobby and women spoke softly because they understood fear. But David had been clear. "We need a few hours," he said. "If Mark believes everyone has disappeared, he may accelerate." So Claire went home. Megan went with her. And I stayed behind, sitting at the same round table with Angela, Helen, and David, waiting while the legal system moved at the speed of paperwork and Mark moved at the speed of greed. Claire told me later that the house felt different the moment she walked inside. Not visibly. The sofa was still in place. The kitchen still smelled faintly of Mark's coffee. Megan's graduation cards were still lined up on the mantel, but the air felt watched. Mark's truck was in the driveway. He was waiting in the living room. "Where have you been?" he asked. Claire set her purse down slowly. "College financial aid office. With Megan?" "Yes." Megan kept her backpack over one shoulder and stared at the stairs. Mark stood from the couch. "Funny. I called the clinic. Janet said you weren't in today." Claire's stomach turned, but she did not look away. "I took personal time. For what I just told you." His gaze moved to Megan. "Go upstairs." Megan froze. Claire stepped slightly in front of her. "No." The word surprised all three of them. Mark's eyebrows lifted. "Excuse me?" "I said no. She doesn't need to leave because you're angry." He smiled then, but it was not the smooth smile anymore. It was thin and sharp. "I'm not angry. I'm confused. My wife lies about work, disappears with my daughter, and comes home acting like I'm the problem." Megan whispered, "I'm not your daughter if you're going to talk about me like property." The room went silent. Claire turned slightly. "Megan." But Megan's face had gone pale with the force of what she had finally said. Mark stared at her. Then he laughed once. "Is that what Lauren's been feeding you?" Claire's hands curled. "Do not blame my mother for words you earned." That was when Mark's face changed. The mask did not fall dramatically. It drained. Charm left first, then patience, then the soft concern he had used for months like a polished blade. He looked at Claire and said, "You went to see her." Claire did not answer. He took one step closer. "You went to Hope Harbor." Megan backed toward the stairs. Mark noticed the movement. "What did she give you?" "Stop," Claire said. "What did she give you?" He repeated louder. "Evidence," Claire said before she could stop herself. For one terrible second, the word hung in the room. Mark became very still. Then he nodded slowly as though some private suspicion had finally become fact. "Evidence," he said. "That's what we're calling it now." Claire wished she had stayed quiet. Angela had warned her not to confront him. But confrontation is not always planned. Sometimes the truth gets dragged out by fear. Mark moved toward the kitchen island and picked up his phone. Claire's heart jumped. "Who are you calling my attorney?" "You have an attorney." He looked back. Smart people usually do. Megan's phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Angela. "Court filing submitted. Bank escalation pending. Stay calm. Do not provoke." Megan read it and looked at her mother. Mark saw the glance. "Give me your phone," he said. "No," Megan answered. His voice dropped. "Megan." Claire stepped between them fully now. "You will not take her phone." Mark stared at his wife with open disbelief. "You really have no idea what you're doing. I know more than I did yesterday. You know what an old frightened woman told you." "I heard what you told her." His eyes sharpened. Claire knew immediately that he understood. The recordings. For the first time, real fear crossed his face. It was quick, but it was there. Then he lunged not at Claire, but toward her purse on the chair. Claire grabbed it first. Megan screamed. "Mom." Mark caught Claire's wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, maybe. Not in a way he could not explain later, but enough to remind her that his control had never only been verbal. "Give me the drive," he said. Claire's voice shook. "Let go. There is no drive if you're smart." "Let go of me!" Megan was already recording. Mark saw the phone pointed at him and released Claire instantly. His expression transformed again, smoothness rushing back like paint overwrought. "Megan," he said softly, "you don't understand adult problems." "I understand you tried to steal my college fund," she said. Mark's mouth opened. Claire turned to her startled. Megan's voice trembled, but she kept going. "I understand you called me the girl. I understand you said I cry over everything. I understand Grandma was scared of you and we helped you make her feel alone." Mark looked from Megan to Claire. Then he laughed, but this time it sounded desperate. You two have been busy. Claire held her purse against her chest. The bank knows. That was not entirely true yet. The bank had been contacted, but Claire did not know whether the freeze had taken hold. Mark did not know that. His eyes flickered. The bank knows that I didn't authorize the business loan documents, that Mom didn't authorize the home equity application, that Megan didn't authorize the distribution. Mark's face tightened. Megan doesn't authorize anything. She's a beneficiary. Then why did you need the money moved before close of business? He went silent. There are silences that deny. This one calculated. Then he set his phone on the counter and changed tactics. Claire, he said gently, listen to yourself. You're accusing your husband of crimes because your mother is upset that she's getting older. Megan made a sound of disgust. Claire said nothing. Mark moved closer, slower this time. I have carried this family. I fixed things your mother couldn't manage. I handled accounts you never had time to understand. I kept us afloat while you played office manager and pretended that paycheck could sustain anything. Claire flinched but did not break. You lied to me, she said. I protected you from details. You used my signature. I used access you gave me. You stole from my mother. I borrowed against assets that were going to become family assets eventually. The sentence was so close to the recording that Claire's fear sharpened into focus. She reached into her blouse pocket and tapped her phone screen. Recording. Mark did not notice. He was talking now because men like Mark often mistook a woman's silence for surrender. You have no idea how much pressure I've been under, he said. Vendors calling, clients delaying payment, banks refusing perfectly reasonable loans because one quarter went bad. I did what I had to do. You targeted my mother. Your mother has more money sitting in that house than she knows what to do with. It is her money. It is dead money, he snapped. Dead equity. Dead savings. Sitting there while this family struggles. This family wasn't struggling, Claire said. You were. His eyes flashed. There it was. The center of it. Not family, not protection, not love, him. Mark pointed toward the stairs. That girl's college fund exists because I helped build this household. Megan's voice broke. My grandmother put money in that fund every birthday since I was born. He turned on her. And what good does it do if the whole family goes under before you even get there? Claire stepped in again. Enough. No, not enough, he said, voice rising. I am tired of being treated like the villain because I found solutions. Lauren was never going to suffer. She would keep her house, she would have food, she would have care after you took control. Someone needed to. The phone in Claire's pocket captured every word. Then Mark said the sentence Angela later called the hinge of the case. Once the guardianship went through, all of this would have been clean. Claire went still. Megan's eyes widened. Mark realized too late what he had said. His mouth closed. From the kitchen counter, Mark's phone began ringing. He glanced at the screen. His attorney maybe, or the bank, or the financing representative wondering why the transfer had not cleared. He answered quickly. Yes, Claire watched his face. At first annoyance, then confusion, then something close to panic. What do you mean frozen? Megan grabbed Claire's hand. Mark turned away, lowering his voice, but they heard enough. No, that can't happen today. The paperwork was already... A pause. Who flagged it? Another pause. His shoulders tightened. Elder exploitation, he hissed. Claire closed her eyes. The bank had moved. Maybe not completely, maybe not permanently, but enough. Mark ended the call and turned around. For once, he had no smile ready. You called them, he said. Claire lifted her chin. Yes. His voice was cold. You have no idea what you've done. Claire looked at the man she had married, the man she had defended, the man she had nearly believed over her own mother. Yes, she said. I do. Then she took Megan's hand and walked toward the door. Mark did not stop them. Maybe because Megan was still recording. Maybe because he was already calculating his next move. Or maybe because, for the first time, he understood that the women he had reduced to initials had started speaking in full sentences. Outside, Claire and Megan got into the car. Claire's hands shook so badly she could barely start the engine. Megan whispered, Did we get it? Claire pulled her phone from her pocket and checked the file. The recording was there. Every word, every admission, every piece of arrogance he had mistaken for power. Claire backed out of the driveway and drove straight toward Hope Harbor. By the time she arrived, David was already on the phone with the court clerk. Angela listened to the recording, once her face grave. When it ended, she looked at Claire and said, This may be the strongest evidence yet. Claire sat down beside me, exhausted and shaking. He finally said it, she whispered. I took her hand. No, I said softly. He finally said it where someone could hear. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Monday morning at 9. That meant we had 2 days to wait and a lifetime of fear to carry through them. I had always imagined courtrooms as places where truth rose naturally, where evidence shone like sunlight and lies withered beneath it. But real life is not that clean. Real life gives you a weekend between danger and judgment. Real life makes you sleep in a shelter bed while the man who tried to take your home sleeps in his own, probably planning what face to wear before a judge. Angela told me that Mark had not been arrested yet. The bank had frozen the suspicious transactions and the college fund distribution had been halted pending investigation, but freezing money was not the same as proving a crime. The guardianship petition had not officially been granted, but Mark could still walk into court and present himself as a concerned family member. That was what frightened me most. Mark was good at concerned. By Sunday night, I had read my statement so many times the words no longer felt like mine. David had helped me write it clearly. My timeline, the missing mail, the changed bank information, the forged signature, the unauthorized transfers, the petition I found in my drawer, the recordings, the threats, the Hope Harbor package. Do not argue with his character, David advised. Describe his actions. That sounded simple until I realized how much of Mark's power had lived in character. The public smile, the helpful son-in-law, the business owner, the man who fixed railings and brought flowers and called his control responsibility. Actions. I would stick to actions. Claire and Megan stayed at a hotel near Hope Harbor after Angela helped them make a safety plan. Claire had not gone back to the house. Mark texted her constantly that weekend. You're overreacting. Call me. We need to talk like adults. Your mother is poisoning Megan against me. You are destroying this family. Then, late Sunday evening, if you go through with this, don't expect me to protect you from what comes out. Claire showed Angela the message without replying. That's intimidation, Angela said. Claire looked exhausted. That's marriage, apparently. No one laughed. On Monday morning, I wore the navy dress Robert had always said made me look dignified. Helen helped me button the back because my fingers were stiff. She brushed a piece of lint from my shoulder and smiled sadly. He would be proud of you, she said. I knew she meant Robert. I looked down at my hands. He would be furious I had to do this. That too. The courthouse in Dayton felt colder than I expected. The floors shone under fluorescent lights. People moved through the hallways carrying folders, coffee cups, and burdens no one else could see. Claire and Megan were waiting near the courtroom doors with Angela and David. Megan came to me first. She had the silver house charm on a simple chain around her neck. Seeing it there made my throat tighten. I thought it might help, she said. It does, I whispered. Claire hugged me carefully, not assuming. I appreciated that more than she knew. Then Mark arrived. He wore a dark suit, crisp white shirt, and the same watch he liked to tap when he wanted people to notice time belonged to him. Beside him was an attorney I did not recognize, a lean man with a leather briefcase and a controlled expression. Mark looked at me first, not with anger, with disappointment. That almost made me laugh. Even now, he wanted to be the wronged one. Then his gaze moved to Claire. Last chance, he said quietly as he passed. Claire did not answer. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Wooden benches, a raised bench for the judge, a seal on the wall. No dramatic shadows, no music, no sudden gasps, just ordinary furniture holding extraordinary pain. When the judge entered, everyone stood. Her name was Judge Elaine Whitaker. She appeared to be in her early 60s with silver-streaked hair pulled back neatly and eyes that missed very little. We sat. The first matter was Mark's emergency guardianship petition. His attorney spoke first, painting a picture so smooth I almost admired the skill of it. Lauren Mitchell, elderly widow. Increasingly confused, financially vulnerable, hostile toward family support, recently disappeared to a shelter without informing loved ones, made accusations against a devoted son-in-law who had only tried to assist with home repairs and bill management. I listened as my life was rearranged into symptoms. Mark sat with his hands folded, looking solemn. When his attorney mentioned Hope Harbor, he used a tone that made safety sound like instability. Claire's jaw tightened. Megan stared straight ahead, one hand around the charm. Then David stood. He did not begin with emotion. He began with dates. April 12th, online banking contact information changed without my consent. April 15th, paper statements disabled. April 18th, home equity application submitted with disputed signature. April 19th, guardianship draft discovered in my home. April 22nd, unauthorized transfer of $17,500 from my savings. April 25th, evidence package sent from Hope Harbor to Megan Bennett. April 26th, college savings distribution request initiated. April 27th, bank fraud department froze pending transactions due to suspected elder financial exploitation. Each date struck the room like a small hammer. David then submitted the signature comparisons, bank documents, screenshots, and my written statement. Mark's attorney objected to some of it, arguing that digital files could be misunderstood, that family finances were complex, that I had previously permitted Mark to help me. Judge Whitaker allowed the documents for review. Then came the first recording. My kitchen, Mark's voice, mine, his gentle warnings, his careful implications, his sentence. Once the court sees what Claire sees, you won't be in charge of any of this anyway. The courtroom became very still. Mark's expression did not change, but the color in his face shifted. His attorney leaned toward him and whispered something. Then, David played the second recording, the one where Mark told me he would make sure every person in my family believed I was falling apart, the one where he said I should be grateful he did not put me somewhere worse. Megan began crying silently. Claire reached for her hand. Judge Whitaker's face remained unreadable, but her pen stopped moving. When the recording ended, Mark's attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, these recordings were clearly made during emotionally charged family disagreements. My client's statements sound harsh in isolation, but they do not prove criminal intent. Judge Whitaker looked at him. Counsel, I will decide what they prove. He sat down. Then Claire was called. My daughter walked to the front with her hands trembling. She gave her statement under oath. She admitted she had believed Mark's concerns at first. She admitted he had encouraged her to view me as confused. She admitted she nearly signed documents without fully understanding their purpose. Then, her voice changed. But my mother was not confused, she said. I was manipulated. Mark used my trust in him to isolate her. He used my exhaustion to make me doubt her. And when I found evidence that he had used my electronic signature without permission, I understood he had made me part of something I never agreed to. Mark stared at the table. Claire did not look at him. Megan testified next. She was 18, but in that witness chair, she looked both young and brave. She described the birthday dinner, how she had laughed at the charm, how Mark tried to take the package when Claire saw the return address, how she later heard him discussing the final transfer, how she recorded him because she was afraid. Then, David played the recording from the house. Mark's voice filled the courtroom. Once the guardianship went through, all of this would have been clean. That sentence did what no argument could. It removed the costume. The judge asked Mark's attorney whether his client wished to respond. Mark chose to speak. I think his attorney regretted it immediately. Your Honor. Mark said, standing with a careful sadness, this family has been under enormous strain. My mother-in-law is proud. Claire is emotional. Megan is impressionable. I made mistakes in wording, but everything I did was meant to protect family assets. Judge Whitaker looked at him over her glasses. Whose assets, Mr. Bennett? He blinked. The family's. Mrs. Mitchell's home is titled to Mrs. Mitchell, correct? Yes, but... And the college account was for Ms. Bennett's education. Yes, but... And the business account receiving funds was connected to your company. His mouth tightened. Yes. The judge looked down at the papers, then back at him. Your definition of family assets appears to change depending on who controls them. Mark sat down. The hearing lasted less than 2 hours, but it felt like years. When Judge Whitaker finally ruled, I held my breath. She dismissed the emergency guardianship petition, citing insufficient credible basis and substantial evidence of financial conflict. She ordered temporary protections over my property and accounts. She directed that the disputed transfers remain frozen pending investigation. She referred the forgery, unauthorized transfers, and identity misuse evidence to appropriate law enforcement and financial fraud authorities. Then she looked directly at me. Mrs. Mitchell. At this time, the court finds no basis to remove your authority over your person, property, or affairs. I covered my mouth. For weeks, Mark had tried to make me a woman who could not be trusted with herself. In one sentence, the judge handed me back my name. Claire began crying. Megan squeezed my hand so tightly it hurt. Mark stood abruptly, but his attorney grabbed his sleeve and whispered sharply. He sat again, breathing hard. As we left the courtroom, I thought the worst was over. Then 2 men in plain suits approached Mark near the hallway. One showed a badge. Mr. Bennett, we need to ask you some questions regarding financial documents connected to Bennett Home Solutions. Mark's face went gray. Claire stepped closer to me. David leaned in and said quietly, It appears this goes beyond your accounts. I looked at Mark, the man who had called my savings dead money, the man who had reduced us to initials, the man who thought my small gift would be dismissed as sentimental foolishness. For the first time, he looked small. Not because he had lost everything yet, but because everyone could finally see what he had been hiding. Justice, I learned, does not arrive like thunder. It arrives in envelopes, phone calls, court orders, frozen accounts, investigator interviews, and nights when you sit at your kitchen table staring at all the places someone almost took from you. It arrives slowly, imperfectly, and sometimes with less comfort than people imagine. But it arrives. After the emergency hearing, I did not go straight home. Angela insisted that I wait until the temporary protective measures were fully processed and the locks had been changed. Claire agreed before I could object. "Mom," she said gently, standing beside me in the courthouse hallway, "please let us do this right." Us. The word felt fragile. Only days earlier, I had been alone in my house with a guardianship petition hidden under my mattress. Now my daughter was standing in front of me asking to be part of my safety instead of part of my doubt. So I nodded. Mark did not come near us after the hearing. The two investigators had escorted him into a side office to ask questions about Bennett Home Solutions and several financial documents that were no longer just my problem. Later, David explained that the evidence suggested Mark had used similar methods with at least 2 older clients from his repair business, small unauthorized charges. At first, then suspicious financing forms, then claims that the clients had approved emergency work. That discovery should have shocked me more than it did. But once someone shows you who they are, you begin seeing the pattern everywhere. By the end of that week, Mark was facing multiple investigations, suspected forgery, attempted elder financial exploitation, identity misuse, and fraud connected to his business accounts. Claire filed for legal separation immediately. She did not make a dramatic announcement. She simply signed the papers, sat in Angela's office for a long time afterward, and cried into a tissue until there were no tears left. "I defended him," she said to me one afternoon. "I defended him to you." We were sitting in Hope Harbor's small courtyard where the afternoon sun touched the tops of the flower beds. Megan was inside speaking with a counselor. Helen had gone to bring coffee. I looked at my daughter's bent head. "Yes," I said. She flinched, but I did not soften the truth. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because healing built on denial is only another kind of lie. Claire nodded. "I don't know how to forgive myself." I watched a bee move from one purple flower to another. "You start by not asking me to do it for you." She looked up. I continued. "And then you change what made it possible." Her eyes filled again, but this time she did not argue. "I'm going to therapy. I'm glad. I keep thinking about Dad." She did not mean Robert. She meant her biological father. The first man whose temper had taught her that peace meant keeping someone from exploding. The man who had sent us to Hope Harbor when Claire was a child. The man she had spent years insisting she barely remembered. "Mark wasn't like him at first," she whispered. "No," I said. "Men like that rarely are. He never shouted much. He didn't break things. He was calm, helpful, organized. Control learns new manners," I said. Claire covered her mouth and nodded. That was one of the hardest truths for her to face. Mark had not entered her life as a monster. He entered as relief. He solved problems. He handled forms. He made decisions when Claire was tired. He sounded confident when she felt uncertain. And because her childhood had taught her to fear chaos, she mistook control for safety. I understood that. But understanding does not erase consequences. Some money was recovered quickly. The $17,500 transferred from my savings had been held briefly in a business-linked account before moving again. But because the bank acted fast after Angela escalated the fraud report, a portion was frozen and returned. The pending draw against my home equity was stopped before funds were released. That alone felt like being pulled back from the edge of a cliff. Megan's college fund was partly saved too. The $28,000 distribution had not completed, though legal fees and account reviews created delays that changed her plans. She would not be able to attend her first-choice private college in the way she had imagined. Instead, she chose a state university in Ohio with a smaller scholarship package and a part-time campus job. The old Megan might have complained. The new Megan sat across from me one evening in Hope Harbor's common room and said, "I'll be okay, Grandma. I'd rather start smaller than use money he touched." I reached for her hand. "You should not have had to learn that at 18. She looked down at our hands. "Maybe I needed to learn something else." "What's that?" "That expensive doesn't mean safe. And small doesn't mean worthless." My throat tightened. A week later, I returned home. The first time I stepped through my front door, I cried so hard I had to sit on the entryway bench. The house smelled faintly stale like closed rooms in waiting. The maple tree outside moved in the wind. Robert's photograph still sat on the hallway table. The pantry door still held Claire's height marks. The floorboard still creaked beneath my left foot. Mine. Still mine. But not unchanged. There were new locks on every door. A fraud alert on my accounts. Paper statements restored. A new attorney listed as my emergency contact instead of family. My important documents were moved to a safe deposit box. My bank knew that no one, not Claire, not Megan, not any smiling man with a folder, had authority without my direct written consent. Claire helped me clean the desk where I had found the guardianship petition. She opened the lower drawer and paused. "I hate this desk," she said. I almost laughed. "I don't. It told me the truth." She looked at me, then nodded slowly. Megan began volunteering at Hope Harbor 2 Saturdays a month. At first, I thought she was doing it out of guilt, and perhaps she was. Guilt can be a doorway if a person does not turn it into self-pity. She helped sort donations, organize pantry shelves, and set up chairs for support meetings. She never asked to work directly with residents. Angela told her that humility was part of service. One Saturday, Megan came home with red eyes. There was a woman there with a little boy, she told me. He kept asking if they were going home. Claire and I exchanged a look. Megan touched the silver charm around her neck. "I understand it differently now," she whispered. By then, she had been wearing it almost every day. But one evening, she came to my house carrying the jewelry box. "I think this belongs to you," she said. We were standing in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Mark had once sat with his laptop and smiled at my bank statement. The evening light came through the curtains in thin gold lines. I looked at the box. "You don't want it." "I do," she said quickly, "but not because it's mine." She opened the lid. The charm lay inside, polished now, but still old, still imperfect, still carrying every hand that had touched it before hers. "I laughed at it because I thought gifts were supposed to prove how much someone spent," Megan said. "But this proved how much you loved us. You trusted us with the truth even when we didn't deserve it." Her voice broke. "I want you to keep it until I earn it back." Claire stood near the sink crying quietly. I looked at my granddaughter, this young woman still learning how to carry shame without letting it become her whole identity. Then I closed the box and placed it back in her hands. "No," I said. "You earn something like this by understanding what it means, not by being perfect." Megan stared at me. I touched the tiny silver roof. "This charm is not about never making mistakes. It is about knowing where safety is and having the courage to go there." She cried then, and I pulled her close. Across the kitchen, Claire whispered, "Thank you, Mom." I looked at my daughter. There was still pain between us. There would be for a long time. Trust does not return just because the villain leaves the room. Trust comes back in small repeated acts. The phone call answered honestly. The apology not rushed, the boundary respected, the silence no longer used as a hiding place. But that evening in my kitchen, with new locks on the doors and the old charm in Megan's hand, I felt something settle. Not the old family. That one was gone. Maybe it had needed to go. What remained was smaller, humbler, and more careful. But it was real. 1 year later, I stood inside Hope Harbor again, but this time I was not hiding. The building looked almost the same as it had on the day I arrived with my overnight bag and my shaking hands. Same brick walls, same blue awning, same faint smell of coffee, laundry soap, and old carpet. But I was not the same woman who had walked through those doors believing her own family might never believe her. That evening, Hope Harbor was hosting its annual fundraiser in the community room. Folding chairs had been arranged in neat rows. A long table near the back held coffee, lemonade, cookies, and little paper programs printed with the words, "Safe Homes, Strong Voices." I stood near the refreshment table holding a cup of tea, watching women enter with their children, volunteers, donors, social workers, and people who understood that safety is not just a locked door. Sometimes safety is someone finally saying, "I believe you." Claire stood beside me in a navy dress, simple and elegant, her hair pinned back loosely. She looked different now. Softer in some ways, stronger in others. The legal separation had become a divorce 6 months earlier. Mark had taken a plea deal on several financial charges, and the investigations into his business were still unfolding. I did not follow every detail anymore. I had learned that healing requires not making your betrayer the center of every morning. Claire had built a quieter life in a smaller townhouse across town. She still worked at the dental clinic, still worried too much, still apologized too often. But she was trying. Therapy had not made her perfect. It had made her honest. And sometimes, honesty is the first real home a person ever lives in. Megan arrived late, rushing through the side door with her college backpack over one shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said breathlessly. "My study group ran long." I smiled. "You're here." She crossed the room and kissed my cheek, then kissed Claire's. At 19, Megan was still young enough to make mistakes and old enough to know that they mattered. She was attending Wright State University, working part-time in the campus library, and volunteering at Hope Harbor twice a month whenever classes allowed. Her college path was not the glossy one she once imagined, but it was hers. No stolen money, no hidden signatures, no foundation built on someone else's fear. Around her neck was the silver house charm. She had worn it so often that the little roof had become smooth and bright from touch. When the program began, we sat in the second row. Helen sat on my other side, squeezing my hand as the director of Hope Harbor welcomed everyone. Angela Reed was there too, standing near the wall with her arms folded, watching the room with the same calm eyes that had once helped me find my voice again. Several people spoke that evening. A counselor talked about elder financial abuse. A volunteer spoke about emergency housing. A young mother shared how Hope Harbor had helped her find an apartment after leaving a dangerous relationship. Then, Megan's name was called. My granddaughter walked to the front of the room with a folded paper in her hand. I felt Claire tense beside me. Megan looked out of the audience, then down at her paper, then back up again. Her fingers went to the silver charm at her throat. "My grandmother gave me this," she began. And the first time I opened it, I laughed. The room became still. Megan's voice trembled, but she continued. "I thought it was too small. Too old. Not impressive enough for my 18th birthday. I didn't know that inside it was the truth my grandmother was trying to send us. I didn't know she was scared. I didn't know someone we trusted had made us doubt her." Claire began to cry silently. I did not stop Megan. I did not rescue her from the discomfort. Some truths have to be spoken by the person who once helped hide them. Megan took a breath. That gift taught me that value is not always visible. Sometimes the thing we laugh at is the thing we should have protected. Sometimes the person we dismiss is the person trying hardest to save us. Her eyes found mine. My grandmother taught me that a home is not a building, not money, not a title on paper. A home is where people are safe. And when someone tells you they are not safe, you should listen before the proof has to be hidden inside something small. The room was silent for one heartbeat. Then applause rose around us, not loud at first, gentle, then stronger. Megan stepped away from the podium with tears in her eyes. When she reached our row, I stood and opened my arms. She fell into them the way she had in my kitchen months earlier, but this time her body did not shake with shame. It shook with release. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. She held tighter. "I'm proud of you too, Grandma." After the program, people mingled over coffee and cookies. Claire stood near the doorway speaking quietly with Angela. I watched them for a moment. My daughter still carried regret. I could see it in the way she looked at me sometimes, as if checking for cracks she had helped cause. But she no longer asked me to hurry my healing. She no longer said, "Can we just move on?" She understood now that moving on is not something you demand from someone you hurt. It is something you earn the right to walk beside. Later that night, after the fundraiser ended, the three of us stepped outside into the cool evening air. The parking lot lights glowed softly. Somewhere nearby, crickets sang in the grass. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then I took an envelope from my purse and handed it to Megan. She looked surprised. "What's this A card?" She smiled carefully. "Should I be scared?" "No," I said. "Just open it." She opened the envelope and pulled out a simple cream-colored card. Inside, I had written the words I had been carrying for a long time. "A home is not the place people own. It is the place where they are safe." Megan read it twice. Then she looked up at me, eyes shining. "I'm going to frame this," she said. Claire wiped her cheek. "That sounds like something Robert would have loved." I smiled at the mention of him. For once, it did not hurt in the same sharp way. Yes, he would have. We stood there under the parking lot lights, 3 generations of women who had almost been divided by one man's greed and our own silence. We were not perfect. We were not magically fixed. There were still hard conversations ahead, still legal updates, still memories that returned at inconvenient times. But we were together. And not because we had ignored what happened, because we had finally told the truth. As we walked toward the car, Megan slipped her hand into mine. Claire walked on my other side. The silver charm caught a bit of light against Megan's chest, tiny and bright. A small gift. A mocked gift. A gift that carried proof, fear, love, and a warning. A gift that brought my daughter back to memory. A gift that taught my granddaughter to look deeper. A gift that helped save my home, my name, and maybe even my family. And for the first time in a long time, when I looked at the road ahead, I did not feel like an old woman being pushed toward the edge of someone else's plan. I felt like Lauren Mitchell again. A mother. A grandmother. A woman still standing.